Okie dokie. I think I'm good to go. Hey, Mommy Dova, good to see you again. I changed some of the lighting settings on my camera to try and give a more realistic color representation. Because with the shutter speed and ISO being where it was really washing out the colors and looked very, very different compared to what I was showing you on Discord versus what you were seeing on camera. So hopefully this will allow you to get a more accurate idea of what the Mini is looking like. Um, as it's being painted. So I suppose we will see in a second because I did a quick test. So this is a lot closer to what I'm looking at when I paint the model. This was the progress I made yesterday off camera, and there are some things I do want to tweak about it, but I kind of got tired of my eyes got tired of painting yesterday, so I kind of took a break. And oh my goodness, I just realized I have not done the knee joints on the interior leg armor. So I'm gonna have to do that before I move forward. But yeah, it definitely cools everything down because it was so washed out in the preview window of the video that I don't feel like you were really getting a good idea of what I was seeing and why I was happy with the model. So hopefully this will help a lot. But yeah, I just noticed that I completely forgot to get uh, his little knee armor down here. And it really sticks out like a sore thumb, so I'm going to go ahead and hit both of these as best as I can. Let's see what we can do here. And honestly, I kind of want to be done with his legs and not have to go back to him. So I think I'm also going to hit the purity seals and the little skull accoutrements that decorate him, so that way, when I'm done with his legs, I am 100% done with his legs. Okay, let's how best to tackle but probably by doing exactly what I'm doing. I really should have painted parts of him not assembled, but I'll be honest, having him all together gives a much better perspective for me of where the shadows need to lie. So I'm constantly fighting that issue. What I probably could have done was like milliput him together and then see how all that fit and block him in, and then I could have gone back and done a lot of the other paintings. But honestly, I think he's looking pretty darn good. Looks like I need to get my gold stuff out, which I was not going to do since I figured I was on to doing more blue base coating, but I guess not. So, gonna go ahead and get that done. With that being said, how are you doing? I noticed you popped on pretty much immediately because you probably got the alert. But how's your day been going? I got all my chores out of the way before I got down here, and now I'm in the process of continuing work on the robot Gorilla Man. So hopefully, I'll be able to make a sizable dent in the overall workload of him, and I'll be able to get most of him done before I actually have to go back to work next week. At work as always. Yep, fair enough. Yeah, from what I understand, I made the mention that Best Buy is hiring, and they are, but it looks like Best Buy is primarily hiring for front service. Need all the money to afford all the plastics. Yep, that is true. Now, one place they are kind of hiring in is receiving, so if you really wanted to, you could work in the back area of Best Buy and just handle the electronics and not have to deal with customers a whole lot. But that's purely a if they hire you type deal, right? So I have no clue. You do what you need to do, because I know you mentioned that you're trying to find something other than the job you're currently at, and honestly, Best Buy is not a bad place to work. I've been pleasantly surprised with the overall work environment there. Okay, let's turn some of that purple into the dark brown shadow. The exterior one was done already, so all I really need to do here is hit some of that gold. And I'll just leave these paints out for when I start hitting the gold trim later on in the model. Because it's not like I'm ever going to run out of it. Slightly better transition to the dark shadows than I had. Right now, there really isn't much of one. We'll change that. Okie dokie. So again, I don't know if you can really see it because of the angle I have to be at, but I'm just trying to hit some of these very small areas that needed just a little bit more attention. Because I figured when I was painting him yesterday that, oh, that's in shadow. No one's really going to notice. No one's really going to care. But the more I look at it, the more nagging it is to me that this is almost completely unpainted. And so having just a little bit more is going to do that, or is going to make me feel better about it. So that way when you look at the model, you're still getting that nice, you know, highly detailed paint job everywhere type deal. Because it stuck out like a sore thumb as soon as I started spinning him around to show you what he looked like in the light. Now, something else I noticed yesterday when I was looking to try and find the plinth in my files is I actually resized the plinth so that it would fit Lionel Johnson better. I do not recall for the life of me how big or how small I made the plinth for Lionel Johnson. And obviously it's going to be a little difficult to do like a millimeter test or whatever. But if you could for me, first started a little bit of work on the army last night, especially after hearing that Imperial Knights are close to getting their codex. Oh, you still got like 6 months, I think. 4 to 6 months, because they are on the radar. But I'm pretty sure there's I think the Imperial Guard are getting theirs before them, and I believe the Eldar are getting theirs before them. I don't know. I remember seeing that they were going to release Krieg models and more Eldari models, so I didn't actually watch the spoilers. But yeah, when you get home at some point, if you could you do some like size matchup with Lionel Johnson's plinth that I made for him so that it's roughly equal to the Guilliman one that I'm going to be making? And to do so, if you want to, you can just grab, if you've got it like 100mm base, and kind of hover it over the plinth. And if the edges of the base kind of match up with the edge of the plinth, that tells me that I made the plinth roughly 100mm. Because that would be super helpful for figuring out how big I need to make this plinth so that, like, Lionel Johnson's doesn't dwarf Guilliman's and Guilliman's doesn't dwarf Lionel Johnson's. I'd really appreciate that. Because I don't have the save file anywhere. I don't remember how big I made it. Okay, and that looks like it did the job. Okay, so I guess now... Golly, I guess I gotta move on to some of the other stuff. I thought I was moving on to blue. Well, I guess in some cases I can, because he does have that underplating underneath his chest guard. So I probably ought to hit that as well. Because right now it's coming across as, like, vibrantly purple. They've also been throwing out the codexes like candy. Well, from what I've seen, they're doing like 2 or 3 codexes, 2 codexes at a time, or within really close proximity to each other. So I really doubt that Imperial Knights is going to come out anytime soon. Like I said, I think they actually might be coming out alongside the Krieg, but I don't recall. Or beside the Imperial Guard. It's a thing where I'd have to look at the graphic again. Or either that or you can look at the graphic. You probably have a little more freedom than I do right now. But they did show a release graphic for it yesterday at Adepticon. You can measure it when you get out. You should have a millimeter ruler. Oh, that works really well. Thank you. Yeah, the millimeter ruler would work real nicely. Because it would just kind of show me exactly how wide I made it. Because it is square, so if you measure one side of the outside, then that should tell me exactly what I need to know. The other part to that being, that would also tell me about how accurate my printer is, because I know for a fact that my my FDM printer is not super accurate because I don't have it that well dialed in. But it would be nice to know how off it is, you know? Okay, so let's see. I got the blue in there. I'm not really going to highlight it very much because it is literally underneath everything else. What I am going to do, though, is try to very delicately hit this gold trim down here. Because there's so much of this guy that is in freaking gold trim. I think maybe I can hit that one as well. Big maybe? Okay. It releases Guard with Krieg getting new plastic, then Eldar and a few plastic Aspect Warriors, then Knights. You're expecting March-April release? Yeah, about then. If they keep releasing it if they keep releasing codexes every 3 months or 6 months, 3 months, then that would lead me to believe that the Chaos Knights, or the Knights, are going to be released about 6 months from now. Because we probably got about a 3-month wait before the Guard and the Eldari, and then another 3 months after that. That would make the most sense, at least to me. And as much as we want to malign Games Workshop for doing dumb things, they're generally pretty... I didn't do his butt. I didn't do the lad's butt. Okay, I'm going to do the lad's butt. I completely forgot to do Guilliman's butt trim. So let's go ahead and work on that a bit. And yeah, you can really see how the purple next to the blue shifts the blue down to like a purplish pink color, which is probably what you were noticing the first time you hopped on and you saw him being really oversaturated or washed out and thought he looked real pink. And then once we start painting it down with like the non-metallic metal gold, then it really starts showing as more of a rich blue. Yeah, he claps for McCrag. Okay. See what we can do here. If I was a more talented artist, I would definitely try and draw that and make it an emo, or like a custom emote or something. But unfortunately, all I know how to do is paint the minis, so trying to do a custom emote seems like a lot of work. Especially one of like Roboute Guilliman twerking or something silly like that. But then again, Dark Volt shows up in the chat every now and then, and Dark Volt is an amazing artist. And speaking of, I actually have some art to show off, because, I mean, I think you saw it in the Discord yesterday, but Dark Volt did some amazing fan art of my VTuber, and I'm pretty jazzed about it. I'm so jazzed about it, it became my new phone wallpaper. But, yeah, he did fan art of little Benry Paints, little frog boy. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, because, you know, I didn't start streaming because I wanted to be a big VTuber or anything. I just started because it was fun, and I like painting and talking to people. So the fact that my VTuber got a little fan art was neat. Okay. Mix in some of the brown with the gold brown. Start doing some of these corners. Now, honestly, this is a rough place for me to start today. My dog is getting old, and he sleeps on the bed with me, and he definitely takes up odd spots on the bed, which causes me to contort into a pretzel. And so I'm constantly waking up with like back pain and poor sleep. So starting off with something as complex as non-metallic metal probably isn't the best idea. But I guess at the very least, you know, I'm still in relatively good shape, and I did all my chores, so my body's a bit warmed up. But holy crap, is non-metallic metal a difficult thing to immediately start doing off the bat. That's okay. It's gonna look good on the Guillimans. You saw the froggy holding the Abaddon? Yeah, and it's fantastic. I'm beside myself. He even painted Abaddon to look like my Abaddon. Which just, you know, absolutely tickled me. So I'm gonna see what I can do. I might actually, until I get better with the blender, I might actually switch over my little talking VTuber head in the corner to be that model. Just because it's such a cute little model. Okay, there we go. A little bit of a highlight now. So this is actually like 3 or 5 steps worth of layering onto the model for the non-metallic metal gold. And I don't know how much you're seeing of it from the palette cam, but I start with like a black brown, and then I go to the flat brown, and then I go to a brown yellow, and then I go to the gold yellow, and then I go to a mix of the gold yellow and the ice yellow, and then potentially finish off the highlights with some ice yellow. So there's quite a few steps to this, and to be completely honest, at least from watching other people do non-metallic metal gold, I'm actually underutilizing my layers, because I've seen considerably more layers from considerably more talented painters than myself. There's just so much involved with trying to do good layering and good metallics. Speaking of my Johnson, I'm going to be using him in Azrael soon. Very cool. I can't wait to watch them wreck shit on the battlefield, because if I recall right, Azrael's a pretty good unit. And Lionel Johnson, while not great, is still definitely a distraction Carnifex. If I remember right, even though they gave him a shield, didn't they take away like some of the good abilities of the shield? Because he should have had like a Feel No Pain or some kind of damage negation, but instead they just gave him a slightly higher invul save, and that felt weird. But I do know that Lionel Johnson gets that ability to teleport behind you, nothing personnel kid, and that's pretty cool. Okay, actually, given how some of this looks, I think I'm going to go ahead and start filling in the spots, because I got ahead of myself painting parts of this guy, like Guilliman's fingers, and I'm going to go ahead and start filling in some of that and doing some touch-up before I move on to anything new, because Guilliman deserves the attention. Like, he's entirely base-coated in this purple, but the purple by itself looks a little dull. So having just a little bit of touch-up for the shadow color should help bring it out a bit more. There we go. The shield used to give a -1 to wound, but now he just gives 1 mortal damage for each 6 on save roll. Yeah... that seems okay, but it seems kind of silly too. I know it's supposed to be reflecting the damage back, but having -1 to wound just seems really good. Though I guess I understand why they took that away, because that is like, especially on a game where, what is it, like a 16% chance to hit, or each increment is like a 16% chance swing. -1 to wound is kind of dirty and brutal. And a big reason why I know that is because Captain Lysander used to give a similar thing, or he still does. I don't remember what it's called, but like Fortress or something like that. But Captain Lysander says that if you target him or a unit that he's leading with a weapon and its strength is higher than his toughness, then you automatically get -1 to wound him. And that just seems absolutely dirty, because it turns his Terminators with Thunderhammers into a literal walking fortress that becomes very hard to move off the table. And again, I get it. He's supposed to be too stubborn to die. He shows that off multiple times in his lore, but that just feels extremely powerful. And the one time I got to use it, it was extremely powerful. And Lysander and my squad of Assault Terminators were extremely hard. Custodian Wardians have it too, and it's nasty. Ugh. I almost feel like I would rather they expand the hit dice or the hit dice pool from like a D6 to a D10 or something, than continue to make modifiers that just add layers of complexity to the game. And that's probably where my old man yells at Cloud is going to end for today. but it feels like they're trying to stuff so much variance into such a small area and creating so many special rules that people have to remember that it's kind of overwhelming. And I know that it used to be more complex, but it just feels like it's overly complex and creates really weird situations. But that's entirely just me. If it's working well for the tabletop and it works well for the game, then obviously my opinion is not that, doesn't carry too much weight. But it's like how they expanded toughness to be beyond an 8, and how much that's helped the game with balance. And with units feeling better than they did, because, like, having a horde of Eradicators used to be a death knell if you were playing against Space Marines, because Eradicators were just such efficient tank hunters, you know? And now, while they're still good, they're nowhere near as good, because their multi-meltas aren't going to immediately level an Imperial Knight, for example. But I don't know. I don't play the game as much. You have considerably more experience in Warhammer than I do now, so you can tell me whether you think they're good or not. That's why you love using Grey Knight Masters. They just ignore modifiers. I look at a datasheet and roll. See, there you go. Straight from a player's mouth, that, like, modifiers can get really annoying because they start taking away from what each of the armies are trying to do. I really think you should give one-page rules a shot. Honestly, it might end up feeling too simplistic compared to what you're used to, but it really makes it so you can focus what's on the table instead of trying to find the exact right rule on your datasheet. And that's incredibly refreshing after having to deal with especially late 9th edition, which was the last time I seriously got a chance to play. But that being said, we are not here to proselytize into one-page rules. I'm here to paint the little gold trim on Guilliman's machine gun shroud. When there's a lot of stacking debuffs, and you're getting +1 to something, then ignoring one, it's really hard to keep track of it. Exactly. Goobertown Hobbies, actually, he was going to post a video, and then thought the better of it, and then posted it anyway, because he just felt like the video was too negative. And given that he kind of has a joking reputation as the Bob Ross of mini painting, because he's generally very gentle and positive, that tells you something. But he legitimately hates playing Warhammer. And it's almost entirely because the rules are far too complex, and there's too much, I can't remember the exact word for it, but it's basically that the game doesn't feel like the world that the game is trying to create in your head. Which I get entirely, because a lot of the pictures and demonstrations they have of just like propaganda art for the armies, they're these huge masses that are all kind of charging at each other or in close proximity, so you just see like masses of humanity or masses of aliens all charging each other, and it's just a giant scrum, and that looks really cool, but you never see that on the board because of how the game is designed. That's why you're liking Age of Sigmar more and more. It's a lot more simple. I mean, that's absolutely fair. In fact, let me... Warhammer 40k... And like I said, I get that Warhammer is supposed to be... Or these pictures are trying to show off the models. So they've got to have as many of them on camera as they can. But it's just kind of jarring to see these awesome pictures of like these closely clumped together armies charging at each other, and then going to the actual game and seeing that it's nothing like that. Here, one moment. Let me find an example. It's not strength or toughness, it's just stuff on a datasheet and says, here's how well you work, do thing. That's actually specifically how one-page rules works, and that's why I like one-page rules. I wish there was a little bit more, but for what it is, I think it does a good job. But yeah, like, you know, this shot. One moment. This is a really good shot that kind of shows off what I'm talking about. You've got Guilliman and his Ultramarines and Calgar, and they're completely surrounded by by Chaos Marines, and then you've got some other Marines in the background, and it's a cool shot. And there's Abaddon across from Guilliman, and it's a really neat shot. And again, it's not perfect or anything, and obviously, if someone looks at it, they're going to be like, "Wow, Guilliman really stretched himself thin and did the dumb." But Warhammer 40K gameplay. Hope this actually gives me tabletop gameplay and not the video game. It looks like it's trying to give me the video game. Okay, here's a shot from an old Warhammer game that I found that's on Wikipedia. But when you look at it in real life, you end up kind of getting this. But even less so. Like, this actually looks like a half-decent board. So it's kind of weird seeing the propaganda shots versus how the game actually plays. And one of the things that, what's his name? That Goobertown Hobbies kind of harped on was it felt like everyone huddled behind, you know, like corners of building wreckage like a bunch of dorks and just kind of sniped at each other until they absolutely had to move out. And I think that his words are a bit harsh, but the fact that you set up your army basically clumped behind building structures, and then you slowly trying to figure out how to get positioning on another army that's clumped behind building structures does feel kind of weird. Yeah, it's not as cool in person. The lore and idea is so cool when you get and you're taking two bros rolling dice and talking trash. See, I don't mind that part of it. I like the fact that it's you know, two people really chilling out and having a good time and, you know, being their army, if you want to call it that. I think that's fine. My issue is just that the game itself doesn't look like what they kind of give you as a model in your head. And I understand that that's probably very difficult to replicate on a board. So I'm curious, what would be the solution to that? How to make Warhammer feel more like the propaganda stuff that they make, you know? Actually, no, I don't want it to be this bright. I think I'm going to mix in some black. And then we're going to go back over the center bit and let that really kind of kludge in there. Same with this. We're going to let this really kludge in here. And actually mix some purple in there too. Get some color depth in there. I love the social aspect. I could spend multiple hours just hanging out and rolling dice. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. When I first got into the game, I remember Soft Servo, Mr. S, talking about how you kind of need to dedicate a whole afternoon to Warhammer. And at the time, I was like, that's silly. The game, you should be able to play the game in less time than that. And clearly I was wrong. But I do kind of feel like that's an aspect of the game that I should have emphasized more or should have paid more attention to. That it's primarily a social thing first and a game second. And I should treat it more like you treat a baseball game. In that you go there to have fun and hang out and chat with friends. But at the same time, that becomes difficult when you have to keep track of a million rules. You don't worry about hiding behind buildings, Grey Knights. If you hide behind the building, I'll just show up behind the building. Yeah, fair enough. And actually, how do the Grey Knights teleportation things work? Because I know, like... And actually, I'll be honest, I don't know, because I don't play enough of the game. But usually, aren't things kept in reserve or deep strike only allowed to come in during the second movement phase? Like, after the second movement phase? And it's not really a thing of, like, turn 1, I can teleport behind you, nothing personnel, kid. Because that's how I always thought, like, the Grey Knights and, you know, Terminators and whatnot worked. And actually, you're working, so I don't really think it's a good idea for you to take time to give me a detailed explanation of how rapid ingress stratagems work. Because I thought even if you were playing, or if it was during the opponent's turn, it still had to be during turn 2. You couldn't rapid ingress on turn 1 during their movement phase, or whatever. But again, I don't know, because I don't play enough of the game to know the answers to those questions. I still want to do a tournament at some time. Like, the next time there's like a big thing. At the end of your turn, I could pick up to 3 units and move them around. They absolutely come down turn 1 with their faction rolling. God, I hope so. Okay, I'll have to look into that more deeply, because it feels like the rules are explained well enough, and I'm just too dumb to understand them. Or that they're not explained well enough, and the words that they use, confuse me. Which could also go back to the I'm too dumb to understand them, but who knows? There's a reason I paint. Yet turn 1 rapid ingress seems terrifying. And actually encourages me to use my Terminators more. Because I love Terminators. They are Terminators and Devastators are my 2 favorite units in 40k. I think I've come to that conclusion. Big armored dudes with big power fists, or regular armored dudes with big gun. And I think that's super neat. Also, I don't know if you saw, but Auspex Tactics did a new video on like the competitive viability of the different factions, and it looks like Space Marines. Hey Red, how's it going? Good to see you again. How's your day been? It looks like the bottom factions again are the Space Marines, and they have become considerably worse since the new faction dealy-do. And again, don't play very often. Wouldn't know. The faction ability is what lets Grey Knights do it, no one else can. It's because they must drop down again. Fair enough. I mean, their whole thing is based on being fast despite being heavy, because they are kind of like the shock troops of the shock troops, so that does make sense. Yeah, I'll just have to read up a little more on it. Okay, and honestly, having this scroll painted back up to a brighter color is really helping out with the overall look of Guilliman again. Not bad. Celebrated your 19th anniversary on Monday. Well, congratulations. I hope you guys did something really fun. I celebrated my 4th anniversary with my wife in June. And I think, unfortunately, we were both just a little too poor to do anything with it, because the job that I'm currently working doesn't pay well enough, and the job she's currently working allows us to pay off the bills, and that's like it. Though I could be wrong. I think we might have gone to our favorite Japanese restaurant. The wife forgot? Oh no. Well, at least you remembered. So someone in the couple remembered, and hopefully you guys had a good time. From my understanding, Grey Knight's the only faction that can go sup kid turn 1, but only if you go second. Guess who's getting 2 dwarf battalion forces? Very cool. Yeah, the dwarfs are everything that I dreamed a dwarf would be. And I'm so happy that they're back in the old world. And once again, if I had more money and more time, the dwarves would definitely be an army I would collect, because they are just so unbearably good. The fact that they're like 90% facial hair and 10% limbs, and then another 20% weapons, is so good. And honestly, I think I can tell whether or not I'm going to be friends with a person based on whether or not they like those dwarves. If they look at the old world dwarves and go, those look silly, it's like, I don't know if we can be friends. But if they go, those look silly, I love them, then yes, I can be friends with that person. Because that's exactly how I feel about the dwarves in the old world. Okay. Yeah, see, turning that scroll work into that brighter color really saves the look of the legs on this guy. Now, see, unfortunately, the dwarves would be really low on my tier list right now, Mommy Dova. I've got so many other things that I'm interested in buying, and that I have kind of in the queue. Like, I really want to go ahead and make a Sons of Horus army in 30k, because I'm going to be getting Horus Ascended soon. And I also still want to make an Imperial Fist army in 30k. And I still want to flesh out, you know, my Death Guard some more. I want to get them back up to 2,000 points of painted army that I can be proud of. I still want to build my Sisters back up, my Sisters of Battle, now that I'm finally getting some headway. There's so many things. I want to get into Age of Sigmar and start playing like Stormcast and Nighthaunt and Skaven. So there's just so many other things that are more important to me than the dwarves in the old world. As much as I really love the dwarves in the old world. Okay. Yeah, that looks infinitely better. Okay, so now ran out of paints, and they did find 175 pounds to get them. Good gravy. So yeah, I think with the exception of the chain, which I'm gonna go ahead and work on now, this guy's lower half is done. Like, obviously I'm gonna add more to it when I do some OSL on it later, but I'm pretty sure the actual like work on his legs is essentially done. Go ahead and do that. I just want an excuse to buy Cataphractii Terminators. Cataphractii Terminators are awesome. And honestly, if you get yourself a just a regular Space Marine army, there's no reason why you can't use them. Like, I remember for a while they used to be Relic Terminators until they got Legend ruled. And I don't see why you can't just say, okay, they're Terminators and they have the stat blocks of Terminators. It's fine. Though I do kind of wish, I know they're still relatively new, but I do kind of wish that they would rescale the Cataphractii Terminators, because at their current size, they look very squat and stumpy. And not in a flattering way. I'll have to throw it down in 30k since I'm getting Horus and the Lion at the same time. I can already see some potential wars. Yeah, exactly. Which is actually funny, because I don't think they ever fought in 30k. The Sons of Horus... Oh, wait, no. Yeah, the Sons of Horus and the Dark Angels, I don't think really met very much during the 30k. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If I recall right, the Lion was like one of the major players that Horus wanted nothing to do with, because he's just such a scary bitch. And no one wants to fuck with the Lion. So I know during the Siege of Terra, the Death Guard are the main antagonists of the Lion. And like Lionel Johnson's forces proper don't make it there. If I recall right, it's Corswain who gets there and fends off the Death Guard for as long as he can. Okay. I am going way above and beyond what I need to be doing for this chain, but damn it, I want it to look good. We're going to give it slight little highlights. It'll hopefully help it pop a little bit. I don't even know if it's on camera. It's not even on camera. As long as they're on the 40mm base, I will absolutely use them as proxies for some term using game. Yeah, they are. All the Terminators are on 40mm bases. And it also doesn't help on my end that a 3D printed version of them called the Voidwalker exosuits are just so much better detailed than the official ones that it kind of discourages me from wanting to use the officials, and I want to just use the 3D printed ones. Which, now that I think about it, I might just use as the Justarin Terminators when I start doing my Sons of Horus army. Actually, what color is that on? Yep. It's a little crystal. Okay, I can do that. Mix that in with the purple and the red. A little bit darker. He's got a little red crystal. Corswain, he has such a good model. Corswain is a badass, bro. Like, I missed all of the stories about Corswain because I kind of skipped ahead a lot. But his appearance in the Siege of Terra, he is just such a cool dude. Which makes sense. He's like the Lion's lieutenant, if I recall right. So they had to make him really cool. There we go. Okay. A little speck of... There we go. Okay. Now, chain is done. Actually, let me see if I can find it. There was... Whoops, no, don't fall into the paint water. Let me see if I can find you an example, because I think I might have shown you the Voidwalker exosuits before, but, I don't recall. I just know they look really good. And they have some Chaos theme ones or some additions to it that I need to buy because they just look so good. Yep, there they are. The Heretic Voidwalker exosuits. God, it's $26 for the full expansion. Like, I get it, because they're really nice. But at the same time, I really don't want to spend 30 bucks on a... oh, no, I've changed my mind. I want to spend 30 bucks on these. Those look fantastic. Here, one moment. Because he's got both Cataphracti and Tartaros Terminator armor. And they both just look so damn good. See if I can find it. That first picture is going to be fine, because that's a really cool Chaos Lord. Okay, so, Dark Angels, hands rated E for everyone brainwashed by Erebus. It does feel that way. So this is the... This is not showing up. Oh, that's why. Okay, so this is the Voidwalker exosuits. Those are the those are the Tartaros Terminator armors in Voidwalker. And I love how they look. And I printed some actually for my Imperial Fist, but I scaled them down because I felt like they were too big. And I think I might have overcompensated because they are way too small. I think I need to put them next to the new Terminator armor and do that with them. And these are the Cataphracti versions. And again, you can just see those things look fantastic. It's like, why get the Games Workshop ones when you have proxies that look this good, right? Because those look absolutely amazing. And here's the Heretic ones. These are the ones of like the Chaos aligned ones. And again, same thing. Why bother getting the honestly kind of bland and static looking versions that Games Workshop is putting out when you can have this, right? It looks absolutely fantastic. Do I have? Yeah, they're right here. And so, like, here's one example. This was supposed to be, like, one that I did just because I really wanted these. But unfortunately, I sized them down too small. And here's a comparison of a 3D print of the Leviathan Terminator. So I'm probably going to reprint them and repaint them. But they look so much better than the ones that Games Workshop puts out. And obviously, they're able to because they're iterating on a Games Workshop design. But at the same time, it's like, why bother? So that's what I'm probably going to do for my Justarin, is I'm just going to go ahead and print those out and paint them. Okay, so what else do I need to do on him? It looks like I probably ought to just go ahead and bite the bullet and go straight into, like his gauntlet and everything. And as for why did we move away from Cataphracti when they're superior, that is purely subjective, my good lad. I think Cataphracti is great. I love the Walking Fortress look of the Cataphracti armor, but it's a hard sell for me to like them more than the Indomitus armor. I love the Indomitus Terminator armor, which is the basic one that we've seen. I think in lore, it's because while the Indomitus armor is fine for what it is, it's nowhere near as good as the Cataphracti and Tartaros Terminator armor, and that's supposed to show how it's all lost technology. You know what I mean? So if someone has it, that means they have been the armor is considered incredibly sacred. Because from what I understand, the Indomitus Terminator armor is already considered a sacred relic. And there's less of it every day, simply because, suits get lost in the void and in war. And while obviously a chapter is going to do everything they can to recover it, they typically haven't been able to. So the parts, the suits are starting to be like cobbled together from previous suits. And I really love that aspect of the lore because it again shows that the Imperium is like this crumbling, barely keeping it together civilization that is on the brink of death. And I really like that aspect of 40K. And I know that they're kind of moving away from it a bit by having Guilliman come back and having the Lion come back. But I also love the aspect that, like, even with these great heroes, it's taking Herculean efforts to try and get everything to start working again. So they're still keeping the Grimdark, they're just kind of adjusting it. And I, for one, appreciate how they're doing it. I want to learn more about the lore behind Grey Knight armor. It's all special Psyker armor and demon names and runes carved on them. Yeah, that pretty much is it as far as I know. It was specially made because Malkador took a group of specially chosen space marines during the heresy to Saturn, to Titan, one of Saturn's moons, to train them up in this very specific uh, in these very specific techniques and skill sets, which is what the Grey Knights were born out of. Like, if I recall properly, um, one of the last surviving Thousand Sons who actually inherited a shard of Magnus is a Grey Knight, or was one of the founding Grey Knights. And one of like a very important Space Marine librarian or Ultramarine librarian became a Grey Knight. I'm pretty sure even like a World Eater became a Grey Knight. There were a lot of them in there, and it's all kind of covered during the Siege of Terra. That they all leave to go to Saturn via a warp portal of some kind. And what's his name? Oh my goodness. I believe Nathaniel Garrow and oh my gosh, why am I forgetting his name? Garviel Loken are both given the opportunity and they both turned it down. My favorite part of the lore is either Malkador or Big E just removing Titan from the face of the universe until they needed the Grey Knights. It's something like that. Malkador is kind of the father of the Inquisition and the father of the Grey Knights, so it was probably him. Okay, there's too many crevices in here for me to want to paint it like that, so we're going to go back to doing it this way. But yeah, some of the lore's probably been changed, and I'm probably misrepresenting some of it because I don't remember it very well. I just remember thinking it's cool that they gave an origin story to them. So that's something that you can definitely look up more in greater detail. Just don't use the YouTube for it because, unfortunately, you know, 40k lore is being served up in short meme form, and that's vastly diluting what was actually happening. And it's become really annoying watching people double down and assert that this X can't happen because this is how they're supposed to work in the lore, and their understanding came from a YouTube meme. Or whatever. So, I would love to have a book from Demon Prince's perspective about encountering the Grey Knights for the first time. Going from being able to corrupt these Space Marines to finding random people you can't corrupt and who know your real name for some reason. Yeah. That is kind of the fun part about the Grey Knights, is they really are just like F you. Speaking of, have you played Chaos Gate Demon Hunters yet? I think you've mentioned before, I think you don't have consoles, you don't have any gaming PCs or anything. But Chaos Gate Demon Hunters is the game that came out last year about the Grey Knights fighting the Death Guard in like a squad-based XCOM style thing. Given how much you like the Grey Knights, I feel like that game was made for you. Because it does a great job at making the Grey Knights feel stupid powerful. And exceptionally cool. And I just made a mistake. Gosh darn it. Glue that down. Pull the water away. Live free, die hard. It's on PS5 now, so you really want to snag it soon. You really should. The game didn't stick with me because I'm bad at tactical squad-based games, and apparently I hacked my save up. But it is a fantastically made game. From what I understand, the guy who did the Astartes short stories on YouTube worked on the cutscenes for Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, and I have no idea how true that is, because it seemed like anything that was remotely 3D became, oh my goodness, Sayama Peterson must have worked on this. And honestly, with how the internet is, that just annoyed the shit out of me, because these are also the same people who are trying to claim that Games Workshop hasn't let him make Astartes 2. And they have no proof of this, it's pure conjecture. But now it's being repeated across the internet, and like just recently, they finally addressed Astartes 2, saying like, you know, we haven't been as transparent as we should be on this, but Astartes 2 is definitely still happening. It is definitely still on the way. So it's like, come on, guys. I understand that you really want this thing and that you've waited a long time for this thing, but be patient. It takes a long time to get a series made. I think just having a chapter of librarians is so funny, but everyone going Bolt of Power and listening to Gore. Yeah. But yeah, I think you would really dig Chaos Gate Demon Hunters because, you know, even though not all 40k games are great, Chaos Gate's pretty damn good. And it also, like most other 40k games, does a good job of representing the lore for the faction they're focusing on, which is something that GW rarely misses at because they're so restrictive of how their IP is represented in video games. So yeah, I would definitely give it a look. I also, honestly, like the tech priest that they have on their ship is my favorite tech priest. They're so darn cool looking. That should be good. Astartes 2 is probably a big, huge team that'll make production 100% better. Potentially. I mean, the dude basically, I kept hearing over and over again on the internet, which, you know, shame on me for believing the internet, that he worked on it all by himself. And that turned out to not be true, which is fine. A gentleman who goes by John Animates on Twitter actually helped a lot with the animation sequences. And he used assets from, you know, the marketplace or whatever. So it wasn't 100% created by one guy. It was just kind of spearheaded, directed, and etc. by the one guy, which in itself is still impressive. So, the fact that he's probably had to realign the story and redo it so that it matched what Games Workshop wanted versus what he was thinking about solely is probably a huge reason why production kind of went on the back burner. That, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just wanted him to work on a bunch of other things. I do know Brotherhood Tech Marines for the win. Yeah, kinda. It wasn't a Tech Marine, it was an actual Adeptus Mechanicus character. Matter of fact, you know what? Let me see if I can do this real quick. Because, do I have the game installed? I probably don't. No I don't, darn. I was just gonna go ahead and pull the game up. Because I own the game, I just don't play it. And they can't exactly copyright strike me for playing a game, because that's 90% of what Twitch is about. Okay, so next is gonna be... Next is just gonna be plain brown. One of the things I think is redundant about Grey Knights is the Brotherhood Librarian. Aren't they all basically librarians? I don't know much about Psychers in 40k. I actually don't know. I think so. I think they all have psychic ability. But in terms of librarians, I think librarians they're more than just psychers. They also are control of like the chapter's records, hence librarian. But I believe they are the most powerful psychers in the chapter. So in regular Space Marine chapters, the librarian is super important because they are the primary psyker, and anyone with psychic potential becomes a librarian. But since all of them are psychers with the Grey Knights, I think it's that they are like especially powerful psychers. And again, they are also the keeper of the chapter's records and secrets and yada yada yada. That's my understanding. But of course, I've spent most of my time reading 30k, so my knowledge of 40k infrastructure and lore is not very good. And this giant gauntlet. My god, this Power Fist is so cool. That was another thing I used to think was really dumb until I really bought into 40k, was I thought Power Fists were stupid. And that just tells you how misinformed I was. And I don't know if you've actually seen it, but like the Power Fist in Space Marine 2 is like the single most perfect Power Fist I've ever seen. It's so good. Because you can just swing it around like a giant metal glove, but you can also supercharge it. And when you do, the character who's wielding it they clench their fist, and then as it gets supercharged with energy, it crackles and shudders. So it kind of has that visual, like, oh god, he's going to hit harder type deal. And it's so beautiful. For Grey Knights, I bet librarians keep records on the names, reappearance of certain demons. Yeah. That's probably what the librarians are for, because yeah, they're like the shamans of the Space Marines. So having a Space Marine chapter full of shamans means you've got like one elder shaman whose job it is to, you know, make sure that all of the rites are being performed and everything is being remembered properly. And once again, I want to emphasize, I could be horribly wrong, but that was my understanding of the Grey Knights and of what librarians are to begin with. So that's what would make the most sense to me. Giant freaking eagle Aquila. I'm going to be using the Power Sword 100%, that and the Thunder Hammer. Both of which, I mean, there are no bad choices in this game. I did see, which made me extremely happy, that one of the new weapons that'll be dropping as the game continues development, post-release, is the Neo-Volkite pistol. And Volkites in the Warhammer world are lost technology, or they were until Call showed up with his ancient technology. But they were basically microwave guns, in that when you got hit by them, they would literally microwave your insides and make you burst into flame. And that shit's wild. So I have no idea how they're going to represent that in-game. I do know that, like, everything else they've done looks fantastic. The Melta looks exactly like I would have hoped a Melta would have looked like. The Power Fist looks good. The Thunder Hammer looks amazing. I want to see an Apothecary with a fat-ass Absolver pistol. Unfortunately, they don't have Apothecary in-game. They just have Gravis. So maybe, if we're real lucky, they'll change it so that, like, one of the class trees for the Gravis is like a combat medic. And then he can have that giant fuck-off, like, Dirty Harry style pistol. Which would be absolutely wild. But again, who knows? Who knows what their plans are as the game continues development. I hope it sells like $1 million. I hope it sells 1 million of them and it ends up getting, like, the best reviews. And ends up being real popular. Obviously, it's never going to reach... You've got to add classes over time. To some extent, I hope so, but at the same time, they definitely didn't with Space Marine 1. And if the game isn't as popular as they'd hoped, then there's no reason to do that. And like, Darktide, as another example, hasn't released new classes. They've just kind of redesigned how they've done their current classes. So, it really depends on the scale of the operation. Right? I have no idea how big and broad they're going to go with this game in terms of scope and size. And well, yeah, I would love for them to dedicate $1 million bazillion to it and make it as comprehensive as possible. Warhammer doesn't have the greatest tales of success with their video games. The game is probably the biggest launch of the year. I don't think so. I mean, in terms of Warhammer fans, yes. In terms of fans of video games, no. I know there's going to be there are bigger ones out there. Just off the top of my head, I'm not sure what they are. But thankfully, it looks like Space Marine has been getting amazing traction. And people who have played it are like, this game is better than it has any right to be. And with that being the case, it's like, okay, cool. Positive publicity, good. Because the last thing you really want to hear about is like, oh yeah, we played the game and it was fine. Instead, we're getting stories of how, no, this game's actually a banger. This game's really good. And it's like, yes, these are the stories I want to hear about a game I am excited to play. But yeah, what's wild to me, and I completely forgot about this, but didn't, like, Helldivers come out this year? like earlier this year, because that game was a phenomenon for a little while until Sony decided to screw over the developers. And I know there have been some other big releases. Shadow of the Erd Tree. Demo trials being posted on YouTube was good for the millions of views and a very large consensus of, oh, that's cool. Exactly, yeah. They've done a really good job managing the PR for the game, I think. And the fact that the company keeps emphasizing that the game's not going to be hide behind microtransactions, and you know they've already got a roadmap out of what they plan on doing over the next year for it. It's definitely been a lot of good news and a lot of good positive publicity, and that's something I'm really excited about. But yeah, honestly, I think Shadow of the Erd Tree was a more important game for a lot of reasons to come out this year. And yet, Helldivers, yeah, it did flop recently, but that's more to do with the fact that, like you said, Sony really screwed the pooch on it, and they've been trying to recover ever since. And now, the people that are left playing it are just kind of complaining for the sake of complaining. Like, I know they have fairly legitimate grievances because of how Helldivers is working with weapon balance, but that feels like it's hitting such a narrow niche of people to me. But of course, I'm not playing it regularly anymore, so I have no idea. I'm just kind of talking out of my ass. Speaking of, Gauntlet. Shadow of the Erd Tree is 100% going to be Game of the Year, and it was DLC. Yeah, From Software doesn't miss. That's all you can really say about them, is From Software does not miss. But yeah, there we go. There's we're getting closer to finishing, at the very least, is Gauntlet. Which, again, fantastic piece of equipment. Very fun to paint. A+. Wish it had a little less gold on it. But at the same time, if it did, wouldn't look anywhere near as cool. I haven't even played Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'm barely a third through Elden Ring. I am just absolute garbage at Soulsborne games. Which I think I've talked about before. I'm at the Radahn fight, and I actually skipped the Radahn fight up until I realized I had to do the Radahn fight. So I just need to sit down and really try and fight the guy and get the piss beat out of me a lot. Like the original Radahn fight, not the one from Erd Tree. You know, the second great general whose soul you collect or whatever. He is giving me problems. I've seen your brother play it, and it's insane. Yeah, the games look so good. On Twitter, there was a video clip of someone fighting one of the harder bosses in Erd Tree, and they kept doing like the open wing stance or whatever it is with the one sword, and they were using it to do just some sublime maneuvering. And the fight legitimately looked like an anime fight. It was so cool. One thing I did love about seeing Elden Ring do so well and be regarded so highly was people being like, well, how the heck is From Software able to make bangers so consistently? How are their games so consistently good? And people have been going back in to look at the development team and see their experience, and you see that they're people that have been with From Software for literal decades and have worked their way through a ton of games to trial and error their way into what makes a game feel good, you know what I mean? So, big kudos to From Software for sticking to their guns. And maintaining a consistent staff, and giving the staff a chance to like develop and learn as they develop games. That stuff is cool to me. And it's something that I wish more companies would be more comfortable doing. Can't even remember last year's Game of the Year. It was Baldur's Gate. It was Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate was like a once in a generation game. Baldur's Gate was unfathomably good. Like, not a how dare you moment, but just like, Baldur's Gate was so incredibly good a game that it brought D&D back into the forefront. It's ridiculous. If you've ever played a point-and-click tabletop game, or like a computer tabletop game, then you'd really appreciate just how good Baldur's Gate 3 is. Because Baldur's Gate 3 is stupid good. The amount of freedom it gives you, the amount of flexibility it has, the amount of things that the developers thought of in terms of scenarios is truly mind-boggling. As with any game with that much flexibility, the writing is really spotty in some parts, but overall, it's just a phenomenally well-made game. And it was actually another great example of a game that proves that if you give developers time to make a good game, they'll make a good game. Because that's exactly what they did. They worked on it for, I think, like 5 years. And, it ended up being like one of the best games ever made. And anyone who says otherwise is frankly wrong. It represented a huge leap forward in computer RPGs. And everyone else who's making them is now going to be making them to try and make them as good as Baldur's Gate 3. And I say that as someone who initially bounced off of Baldur's Gate 3, who played it and was like, yeah, I get it, but I don't, and I'm not having fun, so I'm not going to play it anymore. But I was so stubborn after hearing how great it was that I was finally like, fine, I'll give it a shot. And I let myself kind of sink into it, and it's been very difficult clawing my way back out, because the game is just so damn well made. Oh yeah, the Spider-Man thing. Well, in a lot of ways, that's comparing apples to oranges, you know? They're completely different games, and Spider-Man 2 is a phenomenal game, don't get me wrong, but it's a game that relies more on spectacle and fast-paced action, and it, as far as I can tell, it does so admirably, but there's nothing about it that's transformative, you know what I mean? It looks like every other game that came out before it, especially, it looks like an iteration of the last Spider-Man. And, I mean, that's probably great, because the last Spider-Man was also a tremendous game in a lot of ways. But Baldur's Gate 3 represented an evolutionary step forward for computer RPGs. In a lot of ways. The fact that we had, like, Elden Ring still kind of in its zenith, and Baldur's Gate 3 come out, was just computer gamers who like RPGs eating really well. And again, I don't want to denigrate Spider-Man, because the Spider-Man games are phenomenal, and still are. But Baldur's Gate 3 was a cultural moment. Spider-Man 2 was not. That's the best way I can describe it. And I know you're not arguing with me about it, you're just talking about it and commenting, and I'm riffing, but that's how important Baldur's Gate 3 was to tabletop RPGs, to computer RPGs. It was a big deal, whether you liked it or not, whether someone liked it or not, and whether someone played it or not. It was kind of like, how like when Grand Theft Auto 3 first came out, that game was incredibly transformative to the idea of free roam 3D games. And while it wasn't perfect by any means, it did a lot for the genre. That gauntlet is looking really good. And I'm really happy with it. Now I've just got to stick the landing with the final highlights. But yeah, if you get a chance, even on PlayStation, you have PlayStation 4, I believe, or PlayStation 5, if you get a chance, I can't recommend playing Baldur's Gate enough. I hate to say this because it always feels like a cop-out because I'm baby, but I will recommend kind of using a walkthrough to kind of get you through the first little bit, because the first part of the game's pretty unforgiving. And once you get to about level 3 or 4, then you can taper off of using the walkthrough and just play the game. Because that was my biggest issue with it and why I gave up, was I just felt like the way I was playing the game was making it impossible for me to do anything, and that just frustrated me, and it made me not want to play the game anymore. There's one area where you're told you have to infiltrate a goblin camp to rescue a druid. And I was playing a rogue at the time, so I figured, oh, I can just sneak my way into the goblin camp and not fight anyone, because fighting people is difficult when you're you know, a rogue, and when everyone is still relatively low level. And what I had forgot to account for was the game was going to compensate for your low level by making the goblins fucking terrible at fighting. So I snuck around, I tried to do things, I got my ass beat constantly because I was underleveled by the game's reckoning. And then it was just like, well, I'm not having fun getting my ass beat and having to reload the saves over and over again, so I'm going to stop playing. But then I found out, no, you actually were supposed to fight the things that you snuck around. So, go back and beat they ass. And I also wasn't aware of the long rest mechanic at the time, because the game kind of inundates you with, like, here's what you're supposed to do, here are mechanics, here's how you can do things, instead of having it happen organically. And so, I didn't learn about the long rest mechanic until, like, midway through my first playthrough. And it meant A, I missed a lot, and B, I was constantly stressed out because I was so severely beat down half the time. And I didn't have enough healing stuff. But anyway, that gauntlet turned out really good. Gauntlet. Gold gauntlet. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Good looking gauntlet. Especially under the lighting we've got. Oh, geez, I forgot to do, okay, well, I still got the paint out, so I can do that, I suppose. The purity seal on his chest. I'm trying to finish off parts of his body so I don't have to keep going back to it later. But yeah, I will recommend to anyone who has any mild interest in tabletop RPGs or games with, like, compelling story, to give Baldur's Gate 3 a try. Okay. And what I thought was kind of funny was, around the time I was playing Baldur's Gate 3, I was also playing Rogue Trader, which I now legally own, thank goodness. And, I remember being fully in on Rogue Trader. Like, you could not stop me playing Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader was a phenomenal game. It did have some issues with combat scaling at the beginning, but it was an absolutely top-flight game, at least in my eyes. And I was like, this is the tabletop RPG game I want to play. This is the computer RPG game that I care about. Baldur's Gate is fine. That's cool. Do what you want, Baldur's Gate, but I'm having more fun with this. And then I played Baldur's Gate, and now going back to Rogue Trader, it feels so much more restrictive in comparison to the absolute freedom that was Baldur's Gate. But I'll also be honest with you, I feel like it works for what Rogue Trader is trying to accomplish, which is definitely a good thing. You still have a lot of freedom with how to play your character, but it's still a lot more restricted in terms of how you deal with things. The game's a lot more traditional. And that's fine. Is this even on camera? Okay, it's on camera. I'm trying to do something really stupid. And I'm trying to, like, fill in this Aquila, or this ultramarine symbol, inside the purity seal with layers instead of just doing one straight white layer over all of it. I will say, repositioning the camera, huge help, because now I can really lean in and do some precision painting, which I was not able to do until very recently on this setup. There we go. Okay, one more hack at it. with just pure white. And let's see how this turns out. Okay. Go ahead. Time. Yep, there we go. Doesn't need to be a perfect one, it just needs to get on there so that it brightens it just a smidge more. And there we go. Now that comes across as a good solid white. What time is it? 10 o'clock. I still got plenty of time. Heck yeah. Okay, so this is what I'm working with now. I think I kind of want to get the cables in the front too, which should really help a little bit with the shading. And that'll really help me be done with his lower torso. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the ultramarine or the Macragge blue, mix it in with the black to give the black a slight bluish tint. So nothing too powerful and overwhelming. And then I can slowly just start blending in a little bit of white, which will turn it to kind of a bluish gray, just a very faint bluish gray. And I can work my way up to like a non-metallic metal on these individual parts. Especially since I've actually got a nice fine tip on this brush, that'll all show up. You're going to finish Guilliman like 2 weeks before Horace shows up? Well, Horace is supposed to show up in a couple of weeks, if I recall properly. And like I said, I have a lot of free time yesterday and today to work on this. And then my free time is going to go out the window because I'm actually working for like 7 straight days. No, 15 straight days. After Memorial Day, or Labor Day. I'm sorry, after Labor Day, because I'm working I'm working all the way through this weekend, and then I get Labor Day off, and then I've got 5 days of work with my new job, and then I'm working the weekend again with my other job, or with the Best Buy job, and then I've got the full regular week load with my new job. So I'm definitely going to be working a whole lot more, and I'm going to have a whole lot less time to work on Guilliman. Which sucks, but, you know, I need money. I need to be able to afford my bills and my hobbies. Okay, and so I don't know how well that's showing up, but there's definitely more of a highlight to him now. To the cables underneath his arms. I'm going to do again with a brighter gray. I'm just mixing more of that white into the gray, and that's going to allow me to do a smaller, more concentrated highlight on all the spots I just did. And again, I'm not trying to make it cover the whole space again because that would just overwhelm the previous highlight. I'm just trying to get something on there so that it'll kind of pull the eye. And you can see on the pad, now the pad looks like it's got some more focus to it. Or not the pad, the piping. Cabling. So that's what you really want to do when you're trying to like draw the eye to a specific part. So that way, for example, the cabling and the receiver ports over here, they're kind of blending in. But if you start putting just a little bit of a dab of a highlight on it, you can start seeing more distinctly the individual parts. And again, having a really good brush with a really tight tip helps with that. It really helps you create these fine lines of separation on the model that you can't get with a less refined tip. Like I don't know how well you can see it over here, but like this is the Winsor & Newton tip, and it's actually worn down a little bit by me using it. So it's not as razor fine as it was when I first took the brush out, you know, when I started this model. But in comparison, this is the tip on the Citadel brush I was using, and it's nowhere near as fine. It's definitely a little more rounded, and that makes it really hard to do precision highlighting like I'm kind of doing right here on Guilliman's piping that leads to his chest. So again, I really want to emphasize, I'm not the greatest painter in the world, and a lot of my techniques for some of these blends are still really rough, but the intent is there, and it definitely creates a whole lot more depth to the model than would otherwise be there had you not done this. And you mentioned that your one Chaos Warrior that you got photographed for Sigmar looked a little flat. And a large part of that really is because the single layer you did on him, even with like a shade and a little bit of a highlight, it wasn't strong enough. And so it ended up making his armor plating read very flat because of the amount of light that was going over it. So something to help with that is always to add some highlights to it. And the biggest thing about highlights is remember that the brighter the spot, the less space it takes up on the model. And that's what gives that illusion of three-dimensional space. Because it looks like, to the naked eye, that light is rising to the top, or is hitting the highest spot on the model. And that's what really helps with creating that sense of depth at a miniature scale. Right? Just something to think about the next time you paint. And I'm going to actually get a drink of water. I will be back in a second. I have my water bottle that I'm going to use. And actually, to be more serious, I have laundry going, and it sounds like it finished a while ago. So I'm going to be right back. I'm going to switch out the laundry, which will only take me a few minutes, and then I will be back to continue with this paint job, because I have until noon to work on this. So I don't have the cool or the silly "we'll be right back" thing set up. So I'm just going to put that up, and I'm going to put that up, and I'm going to mute my mic. I'll be right back. Okie dokie, I'm back. Like I said, I just needed to switch out some laundry. So I'm back, I'm good. Let's go ahead and get my glove back on. Let's get back to work, shall we? Well, come on. Honestly, I've been using this nitrite glove multiple times now. It's probably about time that I switched out, because I'm starting to see my skin through the glove because the layer is getting so used up and out. That can go back there. Back to Guilliman. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that looks... What was I working on? I've already forgotten. Okay, I finished the black cabling at least up front. I think I'm going to go ahead and... Probably ought to do the black cabling first, because it's going to... Me hitting it with the brush is going to make it hit everywhere. So, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And hit the rest of the black cabling as best I can. And try not to make too big a mess on the rest of the model. Because unfortunately... I made the mistake of just like leaving it bare while painting everything else. And so now it's just kind of under everything and in a place where if I hit, I need to try glove sometime. I just use my skin as a palette and mess paint with my fingers. I also need to get some new brushes. Mine are starting to lose their tips. Do you have brush cleaner or brush soap? Because brush soap will help restore the tips at least somewhat. And that's one of the biggest like cheap things you can get for yourself. There's a thing called Master's Brush Soap that if you don't have, I highly recommend you get before you go out and buy new brushes. Because while it won't restore your brushes to 100%, it'll get them back to at least serviceable levels. And it's just, all in all, a really good tool to use. Go ahead and hit all of this. You can buy it at Michael's. It's like $10 for a tin. And like I said, it's just really good. My ear itches. It's just really good overall. It looks like this. It's called Master's Brush Cleaner and Preserver. And it does a really good job of cleaning out crap on your brush. So you wet your brush, and then you just kind of run it back and forth until you get a lather. That's really bright. And once you get a lather, you just kind of drag it across a napkin and twist it a bit. And what that'll do is it'll actually kind of restore the tip on your brush as it knocks some of the acrylic pigmentation out. So, strongly suggest getting it. It keeps your brushes lasting longer than they would otherwise, and it's better than just basic water at keeping them relatively clean and helping them reform, because it also has some conditioner in it that helps kind of bind the bristles back together. I've been using the same Citadel starter brush and random dry brush for ages, and those D&D brushes you helped me snag a couple months ago. Yeah, those are all pretty decent starter brushes, and they're all fine for what they are. The D&D ones in particular, I would have tried to take as good a care as you could of those, because those ones can last you a while, especially at the rate that you paint, because you're not doing whole armies at a time like I typically do. Or, you know, absolutely destroying them to try and get a Primarch done or something silly. So those ones I would try and, you know, treat as well as you can. And, like I said, just get some of the Master's Brush Cleaner. Because that's going to help a whole lot with brush maintenance. That way you're not spending, you know, $10, $15 every few months to try and get new brushes because your old ones have worn out. And actually, what's his name? Goobertown Hobbies has a great video on brush maintenance. And if you want to go really ham with it, Jose Da Vinci does as well. Both of their brush care videos are fantastic, and they do a good job of kind of absolutely murdering those brushes now. No, don't do that. Don't murder the brushes. They should last you a decent long while if you're treating them well. That's the thing. Like, my biggest issue is I'm lazy, and I tend to use techniques that are bad for the brushes on brushes that I like. And what I really should be doing is saving my really nice precision brushes for precise work instead of using it for everything. So that's why I kind of try and keep a shitty bad brush with me. Which in this case is actually another Winsor & Newton brush that I've beaten down. I try and keep one of those with me to act as like the thing that lets me block in all the color, and then I switch to a more precise brush for blending. I don't have any orders coming in this week, so I could probably afford some new fancy brushes to try and keep those in better shape. I again, I wouldn't worry too much about buying fancy brushes, especially for doing the work you're doing. Um, I've heard Rosemary and Company do good Citadel or do good Kolinsky Sable brushes. That's probably where I would go because you can get like a decent number one for like $3, and that's a really good price for a Sable brush. That's like a stupid good price for a Sable brush. And but yeah, just don't buy a Winsor and Newton brush immediately because they're expensive. Their what you call it, their quality control has apparently gotten worse, and you're gonna feel real bad when you accidentally ruin a $20 brush within a month. Because that tends to happen when you're rough with them, like I've been. Like, to give you an example, this right here is a Winsor & Newton Series 7. It's a number 1. This right here is also a Winsor & Newton Series 7, size 1. So, be nice to your brushes, or else you're going to ruin them real quick. A really good fine brush for my details. This is the thing I'm hurting with one brush size. Yeah, what you can do is get a Rosemary and Company size 0. And I will be completely honest with you. The brush size doesn't matter as much as having a good brush tip. Because unless you are doing ultra fine details, you can get by with doing basically all of your fine details with a size 1. Because the tip on a size 1 is generally fine enough to hit everything, including eyes and teeth. The biggest issue is that if you abuse your size 1 and the tip frays, then it's obviously not going to be as efficient at doing that. So that's the big thing I would worry about for you is get a good size 1 brush from a place like Rosemary and Company, or a size 0, or one of each, because Rosemary and Company is cheap, and use the size 1 for most things, except for like big batch painting, and use the size 0 for details. That would probably be your best bet. Okay. Let's see, what have we got here? What am I doing next? I suppose I can do that next. Okay, mixing some more blue and purple together as I start blocking in more of the blue armor, especially on things like his elbow, which is now severely blocked off by everything else. Let's hope I can do a good job. Frayed, that's the word. Well, again, they'll fray less if you take care of them better. So again, here's an example of what I do. I have this awful jar of IPA, and that jar of IPA has saved brushes. If you mix it gently in there, you can actually kind of see the brush pigments falling out of the brush into the IPA, which, I mean, you can kind of see just by me holding this up here. And then I rinse it out in my paint water. And then again, I use the Master's brush cleaner, and that brings a brush back from frayed to usable again. So I understand the desire to experiment and get new brushes, and I'm not discouraging you from doing that, but in the long run, good brush maintenance is going to be better for you and your overall technique than buying new brushes every time one gets too frayed to work with. You know what I mean? Go ahead, get some of that highlight in there. Hopefully that'll look okay. Because yeah, you probably noticed, even on my old beat to shit Winsor & Newton, it wasn't frayed, it was just that, like, it had no tip because all of the longer bristles were gone. Because they had just worked their way out of the brush. So it really is a case of, like, learning how to take care of the brushes. Okay. See what we got here. Okay, and once again, he's got all these weird angles, so I've got to like flip the model upside down so I can actually hit some of the spots I'm trying to hit. And honestly, a lot of this trim I'm probably not going to paint just because it's so hidden by everything else that it feels like it'd be more of a hassle to get to. Okay, so we've got the dark coating on it. Time to go to a lighter brown on the areas we can see. There. A little bit right there. And that's kind of it in terms of visibility on the elbow. Yeah, size 0, Series 99. That's exactly what it is. The Series 99 is apparently really good. Aria Silverfire uses them, and she's a pretty darn good painter too. And she bought a bunch and swears by them now. So that's going to be my next brush purchase. I've spent too much. To give you an example, I bought 3 Winsor & Newton Series 7s, size 1s, and they were $20 a piece. So I spent like $60 on 3 brushes. And I feel like for how long I'm able to use them and for how durable they generally are, that's way too much money. So my next brush purchases are going to be Rosemary & Company's Series 99s. And I'm going to see if I can get comparable results out of those with spending a tenth of the money. You know what I mean? Like, that's the general plan. So we'll see how that goes. A little bit of that right there. Think that'll be okay? Really don't like how that turned out, but it is what it is. Okay, let's mix some more of that purple back up so that I can hit that shadow again, because I lost some of that shadow since it's spilled in there. Okay, let's see what I can do right here. There we go. That makes it look a little better. You want me to order 2 of whatever I order? No charge or anything since they're cheaper, just so you can try them out. Yeah, could you get me a 0 and a 1 of a Series 99? I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Because, yeah, I've wanted to try them for a while. I haven't had the time to, like, go around and order them, and it's always felt weird spending, you know, $6 on brushes and however much it's going to be on shipping. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Let's see. Get some of that purple indigo in there under his arm. And again, I don't know if the camera's in a good enough place to see this, but I'm just kind of doing a lot of the same thing now, where I'm starting out with like a purple blue shadow, and then I'm going back over it with a slight blue highlight of Macragge blue just to give it some color depth if someone were to investigate this model a little more. Because a general rule of thumb when I'm painting models for an army is if I can't see it, neither can you. And so I don't tend to actually put a whole lot of detail work into hidden areas of the model. And like I said, this underarm is very much a spot that no one's really going to look at. But since this is a commission and you do want it to look really good, I'm going to go ahead and give it the works. Hey Snow Twig, how's it going? So this is where Guilliman is now. I've worked on him most of yesterday, and I started working on him at around 8:30 today, I think, or 9. And right now I'm trying to hit all the spots I haven't touched yet. So I'm doing some of the, a lot of the stuff that's still based purple is now starting to get either the blue armor color or the non-metallic metal gold color. And honestly, I should have just left the damn limbs off and worked on it that way. Because there's a lot in here that is being made very difficult because of how his limbs are arranged. Thank you. Yeah, I also changed my light settings on the camera, which is hopefully allowing things to stay not washed out. So, like, Abaddon, for example, looks a whole lot more vibrant because the light isn't washing him out. And it makes him look a lot better. But yeah, this guy is taking a lot of work just because there's so much to him. You know what I mean? I'm having a really hard time doing any kind of speed painting because it's all trim. When I was doing my armature yesterday, one of his arms just fell off because I didn't glue it well, and I'm rolling with it because it makes it easier to paint. Yeah, well, like with the armatures, they don't need to be glued in with the arms. You can just pop them off. Speaking of, Snowtwig, have you seen the fan art that Darkvolt did of my Twitch avatar? Because if not, you're gonna. I'm really happy with it. I didn't ask for it or anything. He just posted it in the Discord chat. I was like, oh my god. Okay, I'm really excited with it because I've never had fan art done of things of mine. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Bam. Okay, there he is. There's the little lad. And it's actually, I need to redesign my VPO so it looks more like this art because he just made him so dang cute. And I love this guy. I love this little guy. I love the fact that he's holding my favorite model. It's so cute. And I love the proportions on him. And I love that he's even got the Imperial Fist logo on his shirt. What do his legs taste like? I have no clue. I mean, texturally, they're probably like chicken, because frog is texturally like chicken. But that's not something I want to think about, because that's me. And I don't want to know if my legs taste like chicken. Okay, so again, with all the non-metallic metal bits, it's just, especially for gold, you start with a dark brown to create the deep shadow, and then work your way up to that ice yellow as the highlight and the shine. What I have found, and this was mainly from watching other YouTubers who are better than me at this, but also just that the Abra guy model from the competition. Yeah, Abaddon. Here, one moment, or Abaddon, or however you wanna pronounce it. So that's the real version. That's the version he got. Real version, the one he got. Yeah. I love how I even hit a lot of the OSLs because they're really distinct. Abracadabradon! I mean, the 40k names are silly, so if you get close, I'm pretty sure most people will understand where you're coming from. And if anyone gets huffy with you about it, then they can just go back into their basement and keep painting their little toy models. Because they're little toy models. There's so many other things to be super angry about, and I don't think correcting someone over name is one of those. At least not when it's fake names. When they're real people, yes, they deserve dignity. I now want to see fan art of Abaddon as Abracadabra from Pokemon. And of course, since he's got a big gun on his claw, he can also evolve into Alakablam. Okay, so now that I'm done with... Actually, did I do it on the inside? I didn't really do it on the inside. Again, it's just building up from that dark brown and highlighting the spots that are going to eventually be hit with light, or that are supposed to reflect light, with this lighter brown to show that light is reflecting off of that surface. Sir Thaddeus Gregory Heiberg, or Hyog Booth Spoon Guy, 40k Spoon Guy. Yeah, exactly. You've got things like Gregor Bob. I think my favorite thing about 40k that I've noticed is how they take and twist old-fashioned names, or like names that would be fine in our era, and then just make them high gothic and stupid. Because that's something else that 40k does. You'll have people that have names that are supposed to be similar to modern day names, except they're all twisted and weird. And then of course you get even dumber stuff like Warlord Ghoul Dalak and the Free Ursine hypothesis, which is so incredibly stupid. And is technically canonized because it was in a book. Speaking of names, did I tell you about Sir Thaddeus Cox yet? No, you haven't. I'm scared to find out. Okay. Now I can go ahead and start doing the dark or the brown highlights over here too. Yeah, if you guys don't know about the Warlord Ghoul Dalak and the 3 Ursine hypothesis, that's something you should probably look up. Because it's so incredibly dumb that I think you'd appreciate it. Another one is that they keep calling Shakespeare Shakespeare, and they call him, I think, a historiator or a remembrancer. I don't remember which, but they basically consider him to be like an old figure of official import. I shit you not, this is a real person, something I saw working mail. Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people with older names. I know there have been players in the NFL who have names like that. I don't think anything is going to beat out a customer I serviced back when I first started working at Best Buy who called himself Glock Shinobi. Glock as in the handgun manufacturer, and Shinobi as in, you know, the Japanese ninja thing. That was probably the best name I've seen in terms of people giving themselves strange aliases. Okay, one of the biggest challenges of trying to do like a non-metallic metal in a spot like this is that the angle of attack for the brush is very limited, so I've kind of got to futz it a bit and hope that everything still looks okay. What I really should be doing is using some flow improver. My favorite remembrancer was Ignis Carcassy. Yeah, he's a good one. I'm really sad that he had to go the way he had to go, but it made sense for the character and the downfall and all that other fun stuff. So, it is what it is there. And he is a good one, because, you know, he clearly doesn't care. He's clearly one of those guys who, you know, saw through the bullshit. And he probably is the best remembrancer in the series. Okay, and you can kind of see, I don't know if you could even see it, but now you've got some glow happening in that Under Armour, or that Under Armour area, which is exactly what we're looking for. Okay. We're just trying to get everything to look like it's going to an eventual highlight. An eventual light source. And so what I'm kind of doing is I'm looking at where I think the light would hit the metal, and that's where I'm focusing my brighter and brighter colors. And I kind of did it on the elbow joint. You can see it right there, that it gets brighter about right there. So I'm kind of mimicking it on the trim that he's wearing, where like the brighter aspects of the trim are starting to meet and converge around the same spot as highlighted it on the shoulder pad, or the elbow pad. And while there is going to be some overlap, it's not going to be very powerful. Okay. Time to go into the ice yellow with the gold yellow. We'll see what we can do here. Okay. I don't know if Snow Twig is still there, but if he is, how was your day, Snow Twig? How's it been going? Because I know I've been gone for a while, so I feel like I've missed out a lot on seeing how people are doing. Okay. Apparently my secret commission motive is to get you more and more stuff that you're still learning how to do well. I'm just guiding you on your painting journey. To some extent, yes. And to some extent, doing commissions are an excuse to practice skills. So, like, these are things that I'd be trying to learn myself. But at the same time, I'm going to practice them on the commission so I can get better. Because if you want something to be done high detail and at a high skill level, then that's what you're going to see, and I'm going to do the best of my ability to obtain that high skill level, right? Like, all my stuff is basically non-metallic metal now, just because it's something I want to learn, and I like how it looks better than using metallic or like metallic paints, but at the same time, you're giving me more opportunities to practice it, right? So that's kind of that whole thing. It's going all right, nice and sunny for once, without dying from the heat. Lucky for you. Honestly, it hasn't been bad here. I'm glad to know that the heat is not oppressive where you are right now, but it's for a couple of weeks. It was just absolutely miserable where we live, and it finally cooled down last week, and it was like, oh, thank God, it finally cooled down. And now it's popped back up. It's almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit where we are. I think it's supposed to rain today, which might help a little bit, but it's been kind of yo-yoing back and forth between being absolutely bloody miserable and okay, but it has stuck more around. What else are you learning for painting? I'll find another commission eventually. My biggest thing right now is getting better at shadow placement and highlights. So it doesn't matter what you throw at me. That's something I'm actively trying to learn. So as long as you continue to ask for like high-level paint jobs on the models you commission, that's something you're going to see me consistently do. So how warm has it been where you are, or Snow Twig? Because you said like the heat is bearable, so it's hot without being awful. How bad has it been? I know in some parts of Africa, I heard on NPR yesterday that the heat was so oppressive and there's been such a horrible drought that they basically have no cash crops to speak of because they all dried out and died. Shadow place sounds like Kairos. You should do Kairos, and you should learn how to dry brush with Kairos. There's some really good tutorials on dry brushing Kairos's wings, and I feel like that would be a great opportunity for you to learn about that stuff. Like, I know it's a big job and you want it to look good, but you really should try and learn how to do dry brush placement, light placement with Kairos. I mean, if you insist and you really want me to paint him, I will. Kairos will also be fun because he's a lot more organic than the things that I've been painting. I don't know if you've noticed, but most everything I've painted, Mommy Dova, has been, like, heavily armored. Recently had a heat wave for a while, then it was humid, now it's finally dialing down. So you're starting to get to, like, acceptable heat. That's really good. Having to deal with heat that won't go away is the absolute worst. When it's either way too hot or it's way too humid for the heat to dissipate properly. Bloody torture. Okay, but I want to do my demons all by myself. It's my own personal quest. Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely fair there. Okay. Again, hitting everything with this kind of, like, indigo purple to act as the base, and then working my way up into the Macragge blue. And unfortunately, this gauntlet, you gotta go back over Bellicor, figure out how you want to rock him. Yeah, that's something that I'd like to, like, sit down with you with, because there are some pointers I could give you, but that requires me to actually be able to make it out to Blade to like, sit down and talk with you about him. And for you to want to bring him back to Blade, of course. Okay, so the blue, for the most part, is done there. Back into doing the gold trim. And I think the little cross on his wrist is supposed to be gold, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to add some color variants. I think I'm just going to make it like a silver. I'll check the official box art for the model again, but honestly, with how much gold he is spitting, I think it's time for me to move on to another color just to add some variety to him. Something I saw that was really cool that someone did a Guilliman with is they made all of, like, half of the gold trim silver, and it looked so darn good. Because the gold trim on him can be a bit overwhelming, and seeing it as a silver definitely breathes new life into the model. Let me check real quick. Got his box art right. Let's see. Yeah, if you look at it next to my thumb, It's supposed to be gold, but no, I'm going to go ahead and make that silver just to break it up a bit. Okay, so that means blue and black together is having an undertone of blue is what helps give silver that distinctive shine. There we go. Okay, now that I've got that at least blocked in, go back to playing a little bit with the gold. That's something else that I didn't really recognize until more recently, is like the pool of the brush matters. So the direction that you kind of do your brush strokes is super important as well, and I think that's the silliest thing in the world. But I guess I understand it, because it kind of dictates what texture you're creating. So if you just kind of slough your brush everywhere, then you're gonna just have inconsistent texturing on your model. But if you like do a consistent pullback, it kind of creates more of a unified, coherent texture to draw off of as you continue painting in layers. And again, I think shit like that is so wild when it comes to this painting thing. Okay, take a little bit of the yellow, mix it in with the brown to get kind of this gold brown. Let's go ahead and do kind of the same thing here. Do little pulling motions, and that'll give a lot more texture to the metallic that I'm trying to create. Same thing here. And these are things I do way too inconsistently and I need to get better at. But the more you do it, the more it actually gives like a real look to your model. I'm noticing on my armature he's a little splotchy, maybe because I was inconsistent with how I was brushing. That can definitely do it. The other problem is that since you've got a lot of flat panels, your brush strokes are going to definitely show up more. And so that's where you either need a larger brush, or potentially, actually, your armature would be another great place to practice dry brushing, because of the big flat panels that he's got on him for his armor. My Chaos Knight that I did, that has like the horrifying Scarlet Witch face on it, most of the armor on that thing was dry brushed, and it was just kind of going up the color scale or the brightness scale on him, so that I was dry brushing smaller and smaller parts as I got brighter, and it really gave him a distinct look, and was also much easier to paint than if I had tried to like gotta lurk a bit. That's perfectly okay. Thanks for hanging out. That does a lot for making the model look more consistent. So that's something I would suggest doing for your armatures. It will speed it up a lot for one, and for two, it'll make their armor look a whole lot more consistent than if you try and individually paint it, is to just go ahead and dry brush it. Down here, go ahead and just do a little bit of that pull. You can try and share something in a second. Aren't you at work? Like, not to pick on you, but shouldn't you be working? Or is it around lunchtime now? It's 10:53, so it's not even quite lunchtime yet. But then again, I'll be honest, you know your job better than I know your job, so you know what you're allowed to get away with and what you're not allowed to get away with. Okay, I think I'm just kind of treading back over. So into the ice yellow highlights. Mix that in with the yellow again. Okay. Pull some of that back off. Try not to get too much of it on his actual fist. And again, as you continue to get to the brighter colors, you need less of it, because You're trying to create highlights. You're not trying to actually cover all of the same area that you just covered. Otherwise, it shows kind of a disingenuous look of brightness on it. You know what I mean? Sounds like I got a message. Let's see what's going on. In the showcase. The more you started thinking Thousand Suns? I mean, fair. And yeah, I can see what you mean about being worried with the splotchiness, and that is a case of you needing more layers. Like, almost immediately as I look at it. But dang, nope, wrong one. Like, again, not a bad thing, but that is a big reason why it's showing up splotchy, is just because the layers on it are too thin. So if you continue to put on thin layers, you're eventually going to even that out. But it really, I mean, are you using a speed paint, or are you using a an actual, like a regular acrylic paint? He's only had 1 or 2 layers, you think? Yeah, that'll do it. But also, it depends on what kind of paint you're using. If you're using a speed paint, you really shouldn't. Speed paints are not really meant to be put across large flat surfaces, unfortunately. Using contrast? Yeah, don't... Using a contrast on that's going to make it a lot more difficult for you, because contrast isn't meant for the surfaces that you're spreading it on. Because it naturally wants to pool into the lowest point. And if that model doesn't have a lowest point, then it's just going to kind of sit and coffee stain the way it is. So that's another reason why it looks like the way it does. Like, contrast is really good for one thing, and unfortunately, flat surfaces ain't it. That's okay. I mean, you can... There are no hard and fast rules for painting, but that's why you're having difficulty with it, is because you're using a paint for something that it's generally not recommended for. Like, you can still get pretty good results if you do that. It's just going to be more difficult. Hey, Motorhead, good to see you again. Primer has a lot to do with what you're putting on it, too. Yeah, primer definitely does. I need to get some different blue paint, then. Get some, I think it's Aramin blue or Thousand Suns blue. Both of those are pretty good. And yeah, primer is super important, too, because if you're using the wrong primer, it really changes how the paint looks underneath it. And the example that I always go back to is using black primer with a yellow paint or a white paint, because black primer will do an absolutely miserable job under a lighter paint color, because you're just going to see it everywhere, and it's miserable to try and deal with. So in that case, your best bet is to either use a white primer or an off-white primer. That's what people tend to recommend when you're using a light paint coat, like a white or a yellow. And look at that, I'm already a step away from silver. Need to give it the highlights. You're using a lighter color, all the white on him is primer. Yeah, that's what I thought in that case. Again, the biggest issue there is that it's a contrast paint, and contrast/speed paints aren't really meant for those surfaces. Contrast paints tend to work best on surfaces that have a lot of texture to them. So, like, if you were to do it on the metal bits, paint on a level under a microscope is spiky, right? Depending on what you're using, it's more spiky or less. Yeah. I think that reads as a silver. Okie dokie, I'll be right back. I need to switch out some more laundry. Yeah, about 7 more armatures. You know, if you want me to, I know this kind of feels a little wonky, but if you want me to, you can keep all of the armor plates off, and then tell me which color you want me to airbrush it on, and it'll look a whole lot smoother. That being said, I'll be right back. I've got some more laundry to sort out, so I'll be back. Okie dokie, I'm back. But yeah, like I said, if you want me to, I could go ahead and airbrush the Armiger armor to like a base coat, and then you can do the trim on it, and that would probably make things a whole lot easier for you because it would get a nice consistent coat on it. Of course, if you don't want to do that, that's also fine. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I guess I'll go ahead and do his fist next. His sword hand. Mix some more of this purple and blue together to get an indigo. And start working on his individual fingers. And yeah, like you were saying, Mommy Dova, that does look like I'm going to finish this guy a lot sooner than expected. Because, honestly, I am absolutely cannonballing through some parts of him without realizing it. Now, what I am going to do soon is I'm actually going to go back and clean up some of the parts that I don't think I did a very good job on. And I mean, you're getting to see a lot more of the model and of the work done on the model, but at the same time, you're still kind of looking at it through a filter, so I'd like to make sure that it's actually where you want it to be. Or I'm like, okay, here you go, I'm done. Because there's definitely some spots where I feel like my paint job is a little rougher than it could be. And so I'd like to get your opinion before I like hit the bell and say, okay, he's all done, he's good to go. Just a little bit of the top layer right there. A little bit of the top layer. Just a little bit. That's way too bright. Water. Mix that back down a little bit with some of the blue again. Hopefully that will read much better. Not at all. Okay, heck that up. Fix that real quick with some purple. Re-purple those fingers. And let's try that one more time. Because I went way too bright, way too quickly on some of these fingers right here. Are they visible? I hope so. I was talking with a coworker about how I really want to get a new computer, like a nice gaming/streaming PC, and set it up down here. But the biggest thing stopping me is that this basement is completely unfinished. And so anything I do down here would just be immediately exposed to like all of the dust and all of the other terrible things, including the outside. And he was like, why don't you just finish part of it? And I mean, unfortunately, my father is a former remodeling contractor, and the way he explained it to me, it would be somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 pre-pandemic to get this basement finished. And obviously that's not money that I can just throw around, but if I were only to do a segment of it, say the back corner, that would probably cost considerably less. The biggest issue for me is that I don't exactly have a lot of power back here, and I'd be worried about hooking up a PC to the power grid down here. Okay. Hand looked good. Hand looked good. On to purity seals. Which, honestly, I'm kind of tickled by the more that I think about it, because a purity seal on Guilliman, who is very distinctly Emperor not a god, is very silly. Though he also understands that the ecclesiarchy is definitely, you know, in power, and he can't just go out and be like, my dad wasn't a god, because that would probably cause them to brand him a heretic and they would burn him. Which would make it really difficult for him to restore the Imperium if he's a wanted enemy of the Imperium. And I mean, they mention in the Dark Imperium series that he's trying to use the ecclesiarchy to his own advantage, and it's just not working out too well. A little bit of black, a little bit of purple, a little bit more purple, a little bit more purple. There we go. A little bit of red, mix that in there. A little bit more red to mix that in there. And that dark purple black sludge is going to be the base coat of these purity seals. And then it's going to get like a red trim around it, which will hopefully... Well, I don't even know, hopefully. I already know it's going to look good because I've already done it. But what that'll do is that'll give some contrast to the wax purity seals that he's got all over his armor. There we go. And that's going to look about as good as it will. And then, wait for that to dry. Go ahead and grab some more of the red. Going to use the red on the raised parts. There we go. There we go. Now, I will say, bold pyrite red or purite red or whatever it's called from Pro-Acryl, definitely one of the most vibrant reds I've ever used. I love it to death, and I recommend it to anyone who wants just an exceptionally vibrant bright red. Not even vibrant, just very, like, it's very red. I don't know really how else to describe it. Very saturated red. It looks great. Okay. Gonna hit this with some of the mix. Just a little bit of flat brown mixed in with Pro-Acryl Ivory. And again, all this is gonna do is help bring out the highlights on the purity seal paper. We're just going to keep adding more of this ivory until it overrides the brown, but still lets us keep that deep shade of brown in there. To act as a shadow. Looks like it's doing very adequately. Hopefully. I don't know if, gosh darn it, I keep tilting over to the left because I've still got that old habit of when I used to have everything angled slightly differently. Even more. Wipe that off so I can get kind of a flat. Again, on increasingly smaller areas to indicate that that's where the light is hitting. There we go. And that looks fantastic. So Kaloo for me. Hopefully, nope, still got a fairly tight point, so I have not ruined this brush just yet. Doing stuff like that will ruin your brushes like you wouldn't believe, so please, 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 especially if you have nicer brushes, be careful with them. Don't do too much of that. Let's check some. What color is the hilt, the handle? Can't really see it from there. Looks kind of like a red, so that's what I'm going with. Dark red. Here we go. Mix some black in with the red. Make it nice dark. Actually, no. I'm going to go burgundy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some of this brown to the red. And that's going to give it this nice purplish burgundy color. And I'm going to use that on the handle. And then where the handle needs to be highlighted, I'll use the regular bold purite red. And we're going to get this really nice contrast of this almost purplish red up to a very pretty, vibrant red. Okay, oh, that looks good. Maybe a little more brown. Okay. Back here. Rat. I got over enthusiastic and I accidentally hit my purity seal. Thankfully it washes right off. Fantastic. Going to give that a second to dry, and once it does, we'll start adding the highlight. Yeah, I'm really starting to run out of places to hit that I don't want to hit, and I'm starting to run into the point where I'm like, I got to start doing stuff, like on the gold shoulder or the eagle shoulder pad. I got to start working on that. I've got to start working on his other pauldron, and then the backpack, and then I've got to do the base. So yeah, Mommy Dova, you were pretty much correct. I'm gonna run out of stuff to do soon. What did he have down there? He had... I can't read that. Ultra. He has Ultra written in very fine calligraphy. I am not doing that on the leg. That's a lot of work that I don't think I can do. Okay, so let's take some of that red. Get a lot of that moisture out. Jeez Louise. Red. Okay, let's see if I can make magic happen. I don't need to do anything to make magic happen. This red is just so darn good. Look at that red. Look at that show up on there. And then it's going to fade back in to a nice blend and just create this beautiful shadow highlight. We're going to do the same thing here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it too well because there's footy in the way. All I'm going to do is add some more of that red down there. Some more of it right there. Some more of it right there. Bam. Yeah, that's already starting to look real good. A+. This is why I wanted to switch to Pro Acryl. This is why I wanted to win that painting competition. This is why I'm still a wee bit salty I didn't win that painting competition. Okay. Let's see, gonna do the hilt here because I'm honestly actively procrastinating against doing the shoulders because the pauldrons are going to be messy and a lot of work. That's done. Oh, that's going to be a lot of stuff to do. You know what? Prove it. Let's go. Let's see what I can do here. All I'm really going to do for this is I'm going to continue with that kind of scratchy line drawing that I was doing earlier. So hopefully what it'll do is it'll create some nice texture that I can then build off of do the non-metallic metal. I mean, to be honest, I could just do my cheap-ass dry brush metal, which looks pretty good, but it's not as clean or refined as me going in and hand painting it. So that is always an option, and it's something I've used pretty regularly. It just, it looks a little bit more rushed than if I try and do a good job, if you know what I mean. And so I don't really want to do that because it looks a little more chintzy. And also, to be honest, there's a lot of stuff that can get hit in kind of the crossfire of this. And I really don't want to mess up the rest of the paint jobs that I've worked on. Do that. Like, I don't even remember if I did it, but on Abaddon, for his base, I basically just did my dry brush non-metallic metal gold on the Aquila. And honestly, I think that turned out pretty good. It's something that I might actually replicate when I work on Guilliman's Aquila terrain piece. To be honest, this probably would be better. Let me dry you out a bit. Let's see what I can do with a quick dry brush. Let's see if I can do a quick dry brush, if that'll look okay. Yep, looks exactly like I hoped it would. Okay, fantastic. I'm probably going to do this on his backpack too then, because his backpack has a lot of real estate to cover, and to be completely honest, trying to do it ultra specific is just going to make it look worse. So I think doing this dry brushed version of it is actually going to make it look better in the long run. Because it's just so much area to cover. And then I can touch it up later with a more precise paint job. With like highlighting and the like. Okay. Yeah, that's going to look fine. Take some of the yellow, mix it into the brown, get most of that off. Yeah, I think this is going to be subtle enough. This is going to look great. So, Mommy Dova, what I'm going to do with this part of him is I'm actually going to use a dry brush technique that I use to get non-metallic metal. And I honestly think it looks pretty good. And so I guess you're going to get to see how I do it. And hopefully you won't mind that I didn't hand paint all of the non-metallic metal on his giant eagle pauldron. But honestly, I think it looks really good. And I think it conveys the idea of a non-metallic metal really nice. So hopefully the next time you see this, you'll be like, holy shit, that looks good. And not, you know, that looks rough. Why didn't you hand paint it? More of that bronzer on there. Right there. And now we're going to slowly start transitioning over to the gold, yellow, gold. That's really going to start bringing out the colors. Because yeah, what I plan on doing with this, after I get kind of the initial layers down, is I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-hit the highlights with a lot more specific a brush stroke. But until then, this looks like it's working fine. Here, more gold. More gold. More gold. There we go. There we go. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay. So that's kind of a dull gold you're getting right there. Going to start adding some ice yellow into it, which will help bring out the highlights of the gold in there. Let's start hitting with that. See, there the highlights come. There go the highlights. Exactly what I'm looking for. A+. Sorry I'm not talking as much. It's just that this is really starting to get into like stuff I've got to concentrate on. Because the other stuff was, at this point, with how much I was doing it, it was becoming pretty rote. So I was able to focus a little more on rambling incoherently. But now I'm doing something that requires a bit more precision. I'm trying my best to A, do a good job with it, and then B, not hit anything else. So hopefully that's all good. Golly, I've been going for 2.5 hours. Same thing as last time, around noon I'm going to have to stop because eating food is important. But I feel like I've made quite a bit of progress on Guilliman here. And hopefully it's been good progress. And like, it's been a successful paint job. Yeah, looks pretty good. Go ahead and get a little more white on there. One more time. Not white, ice yellow, my mistake. And really hit it across the middle. where most of that would really show off. Definitely gives the metal a very textured metallic look. So yeah, there he goes. Now he's got a gold shoulder pad, and it looks pretty darn good. Now that I've kind of done a shortcut. That is a dry brushed gold that we've got on the right shoulder pad. And it's going to end up getting covered with like a flame OSL, so it will go away eventually. But right now, I'm calling that good enough. What I need to do now, though... Oh wait, no, I did already hit that, so that's fine. Okay. Thought for a second I forgot to hit the interior. Okay, so the next thing is going to be getting that one. And then eventually, I think I'm going to do the same thing on the bird, because my original attempt at non-metallic metal looked really clumsy, and I still don't like it on my original bird. Why is his... Oh no, his beak is twisted. His beak is twisted. Oh no! Oh no! Oh man, I'm sorry I didn't notice that. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's been a while, Atsu. I've been busy with my job, so I haven't really been able to get online to do this much. So I'm trying to make some time. I have yesterday and today off, so I'm using that time to get back into streaming and to get back into it. Right now I'm working on a commission of a Roboute Guilliman for a local client, and they are going to pay me with a Horus Ascended. So that's the whole plan, and right now... I just got through doing a non-metallic metal gold for their right pauldron, and now I've got to start working on the left pauldron, which I'm starting with kind of a magenta base, and then I'm going to work my way back up to the Macragge blue so that there's some really nice color depth going on underneath it, so it's not just a flat blue. How's the new job? Well, right now, I'm working at Best Buy at Geek Squad, but that was just kind of a transition job to try and get into IT, and I recently got hired by the state, or by the city, to work as a level 1 support desk technician, kind of, and I don't start until September 3rd, so I'm in a kind of weird holding place until then. But it pays well enough. And as far as I can tell, it's far less stressful than the previous job. So hopefully, that will all come to fruition. But I suppose I will see next week after Labor Day. In the meantime, it's just kind of like keep vibing at Best Buy, because I'll be honest, I was surprised that Best Buy was as enjoyable a job as it is. The people who are running it right now are doing a really good job of just making it a very positive atmosphere. And I definitely appreciate that. I can't get the back part of that. Okay, I guess it's back to doing gold or blue. Thank you, appreciate it. When I came in for my second interview, they told me I was their top candidate, which blew my mind, because I feel like I can't be the most viable option in the city for an entry-level IT position. But they apparently thought so. So, kudos to me. But it looks like they really want to take me on and slowly train me up, which is good. They understand that I need a lot of support for that. And again, having government health care and getting that sweet, sweet salaried paycheck is going to be lovely. Because living on the hourly wage is fine, but not when it's not paying the bills. So hopefully, between that, and hopefully me being able to advertise my commission painting a little more, I can start making decent money again. Get a little bit in there. Yeah, like with this guy's pauldron, there's really not a whole lot of room for flexibility with trying to get highlights on here. So it really is just a case of make it blue and then fill it in. Because the purple is really offsetting the blue right now, and that will all hopefully change once I start putting the gold trim in. So yeah, there that goes, there that goes, there that goes. Yeah, there's not much I can really do here except leave some shadows in there to create that sense of depth. which I suppose is fine. On to dark brown. This has been primarily a blue and gold day for me. Put in 21 bouts of HEMA at an exhibition event. I was just up at Crash City Con. Very cool. Yeah, I wanted to go to Crash City Con, and I actually asked for that time off, but my boss forgot, I guess, because it had to be done 2 weeks in advance, or almost 3 weeks in advance. And so he scheduled for me to work the weekend. Congrats on getting all of that, all those bouts in. I bet you were exhausted afterwards. The biggest thing is I wanted to participate in the Warhammer tournament that the local store was hosting, and I also wanted to participate in the miniature painting tournament or contest, which I got to. Ended out with a fantastic double stick match. Congratulations! Hopefully it was a crowd pleaser. In that, hopefully the crowd understood or was like excited with what they saw. But yeah, I got to do the painting competition, and I thought I entered what was going to be a banger and was going to win the competition, but I came in third, which was still awesome. And I'm still just a wee bit salty about the fact that I think that my paint job was better than the first and second place guys, but I was not the judge, so got to deal with it. I fought in only 6 of them, but I refereed the rest, so yeah, you were just busy the entire weekend then. They got that little thin bit. Got that bit. Oh my goodness, there's just so much stuff going on this pauldron. He's got all these little spikies that are going to need attention. He's got the Ultramarine logo. He's got that flourish there. Guilliman's got a lot going on. Okay. But yeah, I painted up an Abaddon model. And I love the paint job so much. I did like a throwback Sons of Horus look on him. I later realized that he would never have worn these colors because he was a Justaerin Terminator, so he would have worn black anyway. But I did kind of like the Horus. Heard your boy Ethan won first place at the event. Yeah, he did. He did a Black Templar conversion, and congratulations to him. I would have loved to know the criterion for, like, what decided the winning factor on there. But that is what it is. Okay, so that's good, and now I can move on to this. Actually, can I hit that? Because I don't like how that looks. I think I'm gonna hit that over here. But yeah, Ethan won with a Black Templar conversion of a Terminator, of the Leviathan Terminator, and with a Mortarion. I think maybe a little bit of the blue, kind of thin that out a bit, will work. But that is definitely a hard spot to hit, given that it is covered by the backpack. Ethan's an amazing painter. That you went up against him and still stood on the podium is huge. Fair enough. I kind of wish I had been there so I could see the model in person. I don't think the photographers did a really good job showcasing some of the models, and I know that, like, my Triumph of St. Catherine that I entered, the picture they took of it was not very good. It completely shrouded a lot of it, and it was also, to be honest, it's a hard model to take a picture of. But I wasn't very impressed with the photography. At least not for that specific model. Okie dokie. Okay, looks like you've got an Instagram for me to look at, so I'll go ahead and give that a look. Yep. That's the one I saw. His picture is definitely better than the one the photographers took. Seeing the back on it gives it a lot of nice context. Because yeah, they used a soft blue background, and It just didn't do much for me. And there's his Morty, it looks like. Yep. Yep. Very cool. Here, one moment. Let me see if I can find the image. Because I've got it saved somewhere. Or no, I can just go on the Facebook. Let's see. Wow, that's an old picture. That's not what I'm looking for. Blade Gaming. Blade Gaming. And here they should have, there they are. Whole ton of pictures, yada yada yada. Okay, boop 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 boop. The window capture. That is not what I want to window capture. That's a YouTube. That's not what I want to window capture. There we go. This was the picture I saw of it. And again, the blue kind of, at least for my entry, I felt like the blue kind of took away from it because I used a lot of OSL, and it made the pauldrons where the light was reflecting off of just kind of fade back into the background. But yeah, that's theirs. They had a lot of good ones. They had a lot of really good entries. What other ones did they have? Like, this one placed second. And I thought this one was pretty impressive. I love the lighting on this one. So yeah. They were both very good. Let's see, what was I working on? Okay. Start hitting this with a lighter brown so that it shows up a little bit better before I start with the gold. Yeah, I don't know if you saw the rest of the entries. I definitely... They posted them all on their Facebook a little while ago, and it was kind of cool to see what else was there. Yeah, and like I said, I really didn't like the picture they took of my entry. I feel like it really diminished what made the entry pop, but that was just me. That's what they saw with their lighting. I thought that vampire was really well executed. Same kind of hitting all of this. But of course, I'm not the judge. The judges were the judge, so they got to choose based on their merits who won and who lost, or who placed, right? Okay. Hold your head up high. Ethan has triple the year's experience. He regularly planes up at local tournaments. He'll have what it takes to outpaint him one day. I mean, I'm not really worried about outpainting him. I appreciate the compliment, though. Let's see. This was the picture they took of my Abaddon, and I felt like it really created an issue because it makes the OSL look a lot less flattering than I thought it did. I'm pretty sure you've seen the Abaddon on my paint stuff, because I did pictures with both a black background and a white background, and it just looked better on the, kind of like what he did. His white background made his Black Templar look a whole lot better than the photography that was taken for it. Because, like, a moment, I got the picture somewhere. Ba-bam. 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 Let's see. Like, this was my picture of Abaddon. Actually is like a little swollen. He's kind of hard to see. That was my picture of how mine looked. And you can see the glow looks a whole lot better in the photo that I took than it does. And that's unedited. I didn't do anything in terms of manipulating brightness or playing with it in Photoshop. That's just what it looked like when I took the photo with my camera. So yeah, I'm really proud of that model. And hopefully I can clean it up a little bit, and then I'll be able to really, like, show it off at a competition and win something with it. Or, like, take home gold. But who knows? It was a fun competition. It really encouraged me to continue doing what I was doing and to continue working on what I'm working on. So hopefully, I can keep going on that trend. I know, right? But again, I'm going to trust commission painters, like actual commission painters, and their photography over something I can do. Speaking of little bits and bobs in there, and now I can move on to the gold yellow brown. That will really help this pop eventually. There we go. Just trying to get those light sources up and running. Always the most difficult part of non-metallic metal is just the act of, like, getting the right light sources up. And making sure that it looks like it's convincing reflections versus just brighter paint being put on top of less bright paint, right? Now, thankfully, because Guilliman is so many small reflections, it's a lot more forgiving. Versus if I was doing something with much flatter surfaces, like, say, a night armature, which is what I know my client, or the client who wants this, is also doing. Night armatures just seem like a freaking nightmare trying to do non-metallic metal on. And I would love to see someone try and do that and just absolutely blow my mind. But right now, trying to make sure that this reflects properly. Getting good coverage across it. That's what's going to make it shine. And then after I do this brown, gold, yellow, I'll be able to move on to like an actual yellow, which will be able to show off more of the shine for this non-metallic metal gold. Go. And then a little bit, oh yeah, I need to do a little bit more on these little spikes coming out of the Ultra logo. Honestly, I don't even know if this is still visible on camera. I'm sorry if it's not. I'm just kind of twisting the guy all around like a pretzel to make sure that the brush only hits the specific spots that I'm aiming for. And there, even though this is a darker yellow, a darker gold yellow, you can still see that it's starting to give kind of a goldish tint. So hopefully moving on to just the Averland Sunset will really start to show off some of these highlights. There we go. There we go. Now we're starting to get some brightness in here. And as always with the non-metallic metals, highlight decreasing sizes of area, or decreasing areas to really show that it's a focal point, that you're starting to get a concentration of the light. And that will do what it can do to really give the illusion that there's actual light reflecting off of what is essentially dull plastic. The next step is going to be the one where it gets very bright. dokie. This a little bit more so that we get brighter light on there. Some of that a little more. Just get slightly brighter tips on those, and there we go. Now, start getting this plate to kind of give a better reflection of this yellow. There we go. And now that we're a layer brighter, we're getting closer to getting those nice highlight lights. Next is going to be ice yellow mixed in with the Averland Sunset, which is going to be kind of the big major highlight, and then it's going to be at best some panel lining with just the basic ice yellow. Right now, standard yellow or the Averland Sunset is working as a nice mid-tone to really kind of show off that this is a metallic gold versus just like a brown or something. Oh. Open. Okay. More of that there. Get some of those highlights again on the highest spots. Here. Do a little bit of the same highlighting back here. It looks like I'm probably going to have to paint back over some spots that got a little bit of extra yellow than they should have, but that's okay. Like the ultramarine U is definitely going to get a paint over. It's eventually going to be white, but right now it's just kind of taking any spill over. That. More on the edge. So that fine light placement comes in, but thankfully I think that's good enough there. Next thing is going to end up being just a straight ice white, ice yellow. And that's just going to go over top on some of the brightest spots where the light's hitting it hardest. It's going to be this area, this area. That probably right up front, because that's where most of the light is going to be concentrated. And actually, nice yellow up there. And again, there's going to be a lot of cleanup here, because right now I'm just trying to get everything, not necessarily blocked in, but definitely filled in so I have something to work off of. But honestly, it's all looking pretty good. Go ahead and do a quick fill in right here just to get it out of that purple color. And there we go. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and fill in this parchment, this banner that he's got on here with the brown, because eventually I'm going to go ahead and hit it with that ivory again to give it that nice proper color texture. Let's see what we can do with that. course, this thing has Guilliman's name on it, so I've got to not make the paint layer so thick that it fills in Guilliman. I'll probably eventually have to go back in there and fill it in with an actual color. But right now, trying to make sure that everything is covered in a base coat, so that way it creates kind of its own shadow. There we go. And again, the brown doesn't have to be like a perfect layer on there. It's just kind of being a shadow coat, a shadow layer for the ivory color to go off of. There we go. Okay, what time is it? Okay, I've still got about 10 minutes to play with this. Let's go ahead and start adding brown to that ivory, so I can really start texturing in this awesome banner. Because that's where a deft hand is going to be very important here. Be careful with the lighting, with the brush placement, because I don't want to fill it in all the way. I just kind of want it to hit the high spots and almost kiss the low spots. So that way I'm getting a little bit of brightness in there, but not something that completely covers up the previous layer. There we go. And that way, as I build up layers, I don't have a sharp contrast between any individual one. So that's with a little bit of brown, or a lot of brown, a little bit of ivory. Let's go ahead and switch the ratios a little bit and get a lot more ivory over a little bit of brown. And let's see what that does. Oh, much better. And that's kind of the plan. Again, I want a gentle transition from the brown to the ivory. I don't want it to be incredibly harsh and overwhelming, so it looks like I've just slopped on two colors on top of each other. And eventually, this layer will look really nice and refined. As it gets progressively brighter and brighter. A little bit more paint would be good. Thank you, Mr. Brush. Along that. There we go. Even more so. So now it's going to be like 3 parts ivory to 1 part brown. So now the color is almost going to be ivory. And hopefully we'll see with this layer exactly what I'm going for. Yeah, there we go. Now you've got this really nice brighter highlight, which really brings out the brown in the depths and the ivory, or in the lows and the ivory and the highs. That's kind of what we're going for here. Now on this end, I don't need it as much because it is actually covered in shadow. His golden halo and his backpack is really in the way there. Clean that off, and now we're going to try and go almost entirely ivory and see what happens here. Because ideally, how the color works, it's going to create a really brilliant high spots and allow the low spots still a chance to breathe. I guess somewhat of a bonus is the fact that it matches my ice yellow well enough that if I accidentally scrape it on his gold trim on his gauntlet, it's not going to overwhelm it. But there we go.
And one thing I do kind of want to do is, unfortunately, I managed to get some of the ivory into the actual Guilliman logo. I'm going to take some darker color. I'm going to see if I can work that out. Actually, that worked wonderfully. Yep, and now you can actually fully read Guilliman in there. Heck yeah. Aces. Next is to go ahead and do the toilet bowl. And the toilet bowl is going to start with the ultramarine or the Macragge blue, and then I'm going to work my way up to a white with it, with the Macragge blue acting as the shadow. So again, I'm going to start with the darkest color, and I'm just going to slowly blend my way up. And something I want to be careful about is I actually don't want to hit the sides of this, because I want the purple to actually still show off. So that way it creates a nice separation between the uplifted ultra signal or ultra symbol and the rest of the armor, right? That's what I'm going for. So let's add some more white in there, and let's get to work. Now we're going to get kind of like a baby blue. Can you even see what I'm doing down here? Do I need to... Yeah, okay, kind of. I need to find a new place for my palette camera. But yep, all we're going to do is start pulling paint away from the darkest point, which will be right underneath the banner, towards where the light would actually hit the banner. It's going to be near the bottom. And what that'll do for us is it'll keep the darkest spot in shadow and allow it to stay that dark blue, and then allow the rest of it to look like it's being progressively lit by whatever light source we have. And then we're kind of going to do the same up here. I'm actually going to turn him upside down. And again, pull away from where the light would start to vanish underneath the Guilliman symbol. And start working my way towards the top, where again, the light is most likely going to hit it. And you can see right now, and especially over here, this is going to be fun because he's mostly shrouded by the backpack, so I don't need to go over as far, and hopefully this will still look okay. I'll be able to simulate that it's under a shade. Actually, what I probably can do is I can go over that far, and just in the next coat not go over that far. There we go. Next one's going to be a little more white, but a little less blue. Again, you can kind of see this gentle transition starting to happen where it definitely looks a lot brighter towards the center. And it kind of fades into the shadow. So there's going to eventually be a pure white layer, which is what my final one's going to be. But until then, the goal is to just continue to brighten up part of the chapter emblem that would show most in the light. So it'll get the most exposure to the light, right? Which, in most cases... it's not always the sexiest look, but a traditional Zenithal Prime shows the light coming from right above the person's head. And again, in terms of a lot of mini painting, it's probably the most boring that you can do. But until you start getting more creative, it's definitely a good standard to go off of. It's kind of like learning the textbook technique before you start freeforming and doing jazz. You know what I mean? Okay. Now this layer is going to be pure white. Hopefully show off appropriately. Hopefully I didn't skip too high up on the ladder. Because one of the biggest problems with layers is unless you're really good at the blending, which I am not, if you immediately jump too many levels in brightness or in color, it really takes away from whatever you were trying to do. Because you start seeing these very distinct points of separation between the layers. looks like this is going to need more than one layer of this white because it's so translucent that it's showing the underneath layer of blue that's on there still, which is fine. That's part of what you kind of expect when you get a white. Now, what has kind of blown my mind is I've seen Army Painter's Fanatic line, and their colors seem to be extremely heavily pigmented, and that means that not all of them, but most of them need a whole lot less layers to go from like black to the color that you're trying to go for. And they gave some examples of like some of their yellows being able to do this, and I'm curious how good their white is at it. And I know that many years ago, like a couple years ago, not many, but Reaper released their own line of advanced paints, and they had a white that could basically do the same thing. Like, you could go from straight black to a very bright white on a pauldron in like 2 layers versus 8 or 9. And that just always struck me as like incredibly impressive because of how many layers traditionally a painter needs to go from a dark color to a light color. Okay. Go ahead and hit this last little bit, and then I think this is where I'm going to call it, simply because I need to go get lunch. I might come back down and do some cleanup, but that'll be off stream. And then I'm probably just going to relax for a bit. There we go. Guilliman's left shoulder is now done. So now all I've really got to do for Guilliman is his backpack. And like his cabling. Oh yeah, and his sword, obviously. This is a darn good looking Guilliman. Where'd his head go? I've got it somewhere. Oh, there it is. Well, his heads. I have more than one. So, let's see. Let's see if I did a good job matching this up. There we go with one. I don't know if you're still there, Mommy Dova, but this is what Guilliman's looking like right now. And honestly, pretty darn happy with it. That's one helmet. And then the other option is his other head, which, now that it's on top of the model, looks really freaking good, and I'm really happy with that. This is a good looking model. I do think I want to clean up the Ultramarine logo a little bit, because that transition's a little harsh, but all in all, pretty happy with how he's turning out. So yeah, yay to me! That being said, let's see if there's anyone we can raid real quick. Twitch. Mute the Twitch. Studio J7 is on, Jesse J. Sunday Movement. So, okay, let's do Studio J7 because they are definitely one of. Man, they got a lot of people. That's very cool. Okay. Let's see. What are they working on? Mute that. Oh, looks like they're working on some Tyranids. Very cool. Yeah, let's go ahead and hop into Studio J7, see how they're doing. Let's see. /raid. Nope, those are the wrong letters. Studio J7. Boom. Okie dokie. Thank you for joining me as always, guys. I will see you later, probably next Tuesday evening. And with that being said, have a good day, and later. Bye-bye.